gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Brady, head on the 11 o'clock hour BPL. We'll start the show with political commentator and former Meet the Press host Chuck Todd about the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk and what the consequences are likely to be.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll open the phone and text lines to get your reactions to the Kirk assassination, political rhetoric, and violence in America, and what it all means for the well-being of our civil society. Has political violence become desensitized and normalized, just a regular part of American politics? And if it is, how do we come back from the brink? Call or text next on the 11 o'clock hour at BPR and GBH and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. There are memorial services this morning for the nearly 3,000 people killed in the terror attacks on September 11th. That includes at the Pentagon. Names are also being read today in New York City and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Authorities in Utah say they're continuing to investigate yesterday's shooting death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. President Trump says he'll posthumously give Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom. NPR's Domenico Montanaro says the killing shows this is an unpredictable political moment.
We're in a tremendous time of political volatility. We should say we don't know the motivation behind this killing yet, but Kirk was someone who was provocative and eager to have all of the political debates. He was a key and prominent figure in Trump world and in helping get a lot of younger voters, especially younger men, to become Trump voters. And any politician or public person who puts themselves out there right now will tell you that they've faced increased threats over the last several years.
NPR's Domenico Montanaro reporting. More than 300 South Korean workers are expected to head home today after being detained last week in Georgia for alleged immigration violations. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports from Seoul. The workers were at a Hyundai auto plant.
After a meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Hyun said the U.S. had agreed to their key demands. The first is that the workers should not be handcuffed and shackled on their way to the airport in Atlanta. The other is that they should not face restrictions on re-entering the U.S. Cho conveyed to Rubio what he called the South Korean public's scars and shock at seeing the arrest of its skilled engineers. South Korea's foreign ministry said Rubio had relayed President Trump's positive view of South Korea's role in revitalizing U.S. manufacturing and the economy. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
Israel's attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar this week did not appear to kill any of Hamas's political leaders. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports from Qatar. Hamas's negotiating team was struck while meeting to discuss a U.S. hostage proposal for the Gaza war.
Hamas says the Israeli attack killed 5 Palestinians, among them the son of a senior Hamas leader and the head of his office. Hamas has not confirmed whether senior Hamas leaders were injured in the attack. Qatar says a Qatari police officer was also killed. Qatar's prime minister has called the attack state terrorism and says it's a clear message to the world that Israel is not interested in peace. Qatar, a close U.S. ally, has frozen its role as mediator between Hamas and Israel in the war in Gaza since the attack. Israel's prime minister says Israel will continue to pursue Hamas officials wherever they are. Authorities in Qatar say they are working to identify the human remains of 2 missing individuals at the site of the attack. They've cordoned off the area, located in an upscale suburb of Doha with embassies, schools, and nurseries. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Qatar.
On Wall Street, the Dow's up 560 points. This is NPR.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. A new poll from the Mass Inc. polling group shows the governor's support among Massachusetts residents is holding very steady. According to the poll commissioned by Commonwealth Beacon, 55% of the 1,000 people polled strongly or somewhat approve of the job Maura Healey has done as governor so far, while 33% said they strongly or somewhat disapprove of her performance so far. 11% were undecided. Poll also shows that Healey has more support support in Massachusetts than President Donald Trump does, which analysts say is no surprise. The survey finds that 35% approve of how Trump is doing as president, while 60% of those disapprove. The poll was conducted during the week of August 11th through the 18th. In Boston, neighborhoods that are along the shoreline should prepare for flooding today. Forecasters say the city will be hit with a king tide peaking late this afternoon. That's when conditions align to make the expected high tide 2 to 4 feet higher than usual. Areas like Morrissey Boulevard and Long Wharf could see significant amounts of water today, and if the water doesn't get you, maybe the darkness will. Starting today, the sun will set at 7 p.m. or earlier.
Darkness, darkness, be my pillow. Take my head and let me sleep.
Keep in mind that health practitioners say watching the sunset can provide several health and mental benefits, including stress reduction, improved sleep quality, a boost in mood, and an opportunity for reflection. But why does it have to happen so early? This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org.
Eastern Bradley, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, another edition of Live Music Friday. Next Monday and Tuesday, 2 broadcasts from our NEPM affiliate. Governor Deval Patrick will join us, Congressman Jim McGovern, and the Attorney General Andrea Cabral, and more. The Mayor of Boston will be back with us September 23rd at the library. Governor Maura Healey will be with us September 30th, also at the library. Hello, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie. So here now via Zoom, political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, host of a brand new show, Sunday Night with Chuck Todd, on the platform Newsphere, Noosphere. He's also host of the Chuck Toddcast. You can find that at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com/@thechucktoddcast. Good morning, Chuck.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. Well, Chuck, obviously we're going to start with getting your reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, at a rally outdoors yesterday at a college in Utah. What do you think?
We've been concerned about more moments like this. Every time there's an act of political violence, we keep saying, hey, why is this getting worse? And then we have another act of political violence. I mean, the laundry list this year is very depressing. I just, here we are in a moment where we desperately need some leadership, and we don't have the leaders to meet this moment. We don't have the president to meet this moment. There's not any leadership on Capitol Hill, Democrat or Republican, that know how to meet this moment. And that's what makes it a bit scarier, to be frank. This is bad on its own if we had the right leadership to meet this moment. And yet this feels even worse because it feels as if we have a set of leaders that are more interested in doing but. And we have an information ecosystem that rewards the worst versions of everybody, not the best versions. And, I am one of those who thinks that this really should shine a light on the destruction that algorithms and the social and the tech companies have done to the country, and how this is exploited. This is exploitive of people's personal anger and political beliefs, and we've created this mess. It's just a total and complete mess. And like I said, we have leaders who don't know how to rise above it, and then we had a president last night try to exploit it. I mean, we're in this is as bad as it's gotten in our era. People have been trying to say, oh, well, you have no idea what the 60s were like. I think we sadly do now.
By the way, we're going to play this later, but since you've referenced it a few times, here's just maybe 40 seconds of what Trump had to say last night in the wake of Kirk's killing.
He's a martyr for truth and freedom. This is a dark moment for America. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity. Radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died.
Yeah, I assume that virtually every listener here knows that despite this two references to the radical left here, is that Democrats and Republicans of all stripes have been the victims of political violence, as Chuck was touching upon a couple of minutes ago. So with this leaderlessness that you described, what's the consequence of this? Is it just another in the litany? Does it change behavior for better or worse? What happens after yesterday, Chuck Todd?
Well, there's that expression, it's going to get worse before it gets better, and I fear it's going to get worse before it gets worse. I think, that language that he used is essentially a permission slip to use politics to shut down speech. And that's what's so extraordinarily dangerous in this moment is he's been the supercharger of all of it, right? And then of course the media algorithms only, the reactionary version of his politics has created a reactionary on the left, which then creates more reactionary on the right. Like it's a doom loop. We are in a death spiral here. I've used the phrase cold civil war culturally, and we are. And nobody is interested. One of the other big problems with both political parties right now and leaders in both parties is that there's a fear of admitting that your side has contributed negatively to a situation, that it'll somehow, quote, help the other side, right? This is a huge issue on the right, and this is a growing issue on the left. And the inability for there to be an incentive structure that punishes anybody that tries to say, hey, we've all got dirty hands here. We all need to do better. There is no yeah, but, right? I mean, the amount of yeah, but, that was bad, but this would, but, ooh, stop with the but. As Jimmy Kimmel said, can we spend one day just realizing, look, if a college campus can't be safe for speech, America's dead.
Well, let's can we talk for a second about Charlie Kirk, what he meant to Donald Trump?
Can I stay on Chuck's theme for one more minute?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, if there was that leader that doesn't exist, what would he or she say today, last night, Chuck Todd?
We've got to we got to get out of this. We've got to start governing. I mean, I look at it this way. I think we govern so partisanly. 49% victory means I get 100% my way, which then it takes that other 48% and makes them feel alienated. And so we need a different style of leadership. You win a race 52-48, you need to worry about representing the 48 that didn't vote for you. We need sort of more examples we got to have, here's the thing. We're a coalition country. We've talked about coalition parties. We're a coalition country. And, I go back, one of the things that I've gotten criticized for over the years is quote unquote both siderisms. But here's the thing. You cannot move forward if you don't offer something up from your side. If you don't offer up an acknowledgement that, we could do better here, or maybe this is a bridge too far here. And each side believes it's the other side that is more to blame for the situation we're in. And as long as that is the mindset, we're never going to, right? Somebody has to say enough is enough. So here's what I would say. Every single American president of my lifetime has had a moment like this, and they met the moment in one way or the other. Reagan with the Challenger, You had Clinton with Oklahoma City.
We were
You had
talking
Bush
about
with 9/11.
9/11.
Bush with
right.
9/11.
Yeah.
You had
Anniversary
Obama with the
today.
Charleston shooter.
Yep.
You know, the only one that doesn't know how to meet this moment and has never led us as even attempted to lead us as a country as one is Donald Trump. And it has changed the politics of both parties. And it has changed the DNA of both parties, because that's what happens, right? Once you win twice, like he's won, it's going to do that. And that was always my fear, that a second Trump term was going to change the Democratic Party for the worse. And that's my fear here.
We're talking to Chuck Todd.
We've been reading about Charlie Kirk endlessly, listening to some of his podcasts. He was very, very close to Donald Trump. Some people always also called him a fourth son to Donald Trump. What did he mean in Trump circles in terms of his impact?
Look, this was a movement that always felt disconnected from the youth. And Charlie Kirk was this, he methodically, as Ezra Klein noted, he went when it was unpopular, nobody wanted Turning Point there, and he kept going and he kept going. And then over time, he became more accepted. And if you look at the demographics of the 2024 election and the improvement among the youth vote and the higher profile that Turning Point had on many a college campus, the fact, look, he is somebody that my kids are very familiar with and always have been.
Yeah.
Frankly, more familiar than I am. All right. I've known who he is. I understand his leadership. I've certainly kept track of him as a political influencer. There's no doubt about it. But I've not been a strong consumer inadvertently type of thing. But my kids, because of their youth and where they get their information, they're quite familiar with him. And so it's he really was the bridge from MAGA to get younger, right? First term Trump, MAGA was much older, a Gen X and Boomer phenomenon, and in many ways he is seen, particularly in Trump world, as sort of the leader that allowed the coalition to get younger and more diverse.
Yeah, I think he's got 850 chapters in colleges across America now. And I heard
he overtook Young Americans for Freedom, which was the when I was in college, they were the big sort of conservative challenger to the college Republicans. Yeah. Right? You always had, you have college Dems, college Republicans, but there were sort of farther left and farther right groups, right? And Young Americans for Freedom were that. Now Turning Point became sort of the MAGA chapters.
Yeah, the MAGA chapters, and they talked about his recapturing the coolness of being a Republican, that, you didn't think of Mitt Romney as being particularly cool. Certainly Barack Obama, how many times was he described as cool? Obviously a Democrat. So now these younger people felt that he was the guy that was giving them back their coolness. And to preface this by saying I disagree with almost every single solitary thing this man said, he was incredibly talented and charismatic, and he drew huge crowds.
Right. This is, look, the whole point of the First Amendment, that's what makes us different. And when somebody punishes somebody for using the First Amendment, that's an enemy of the American experiment. This assassin is an enemy of the American experiment.
Can I just say one thing, though, as you two are discussing this? I fear that there are a lot of people who are not as familiar with him as we've just discussed here. He wasn't just a conservative activist, as he's been described all morning on NPR. We're going to play some when we leave Chuck in a little while. He was Islamophobic at times. He thought the Civil Rights Act of the 60s was horrible. Martin Luther King was a bad guy.
Civil Rights Act was a bad thing.
Just said, and there are a whole bunch of things. So he was
Kamala Harris was a communist.
Exactly.
He was the guy that coined the China virus about COVID. Criticized gay rights.
None of this. There's a lot of language he used that to me was indefensible.
Yeah.
But it's also protected speech.
Speaking of language, you also have to be careful. One has to be careful today what you say, even though the sort of the irony, because one of Kirk's things was there needs to be much freer speech than there is. One of your former colleagues, Matthew Dowd, I think has lost his job at MSNBC. This is what he said yesterday. Hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. Was that a fireable offense, Chuck Todd?
Look, I don't know the circumstances. It certainly wouldn't have been welcomed on my air. Whoever blames the victim? Do you blame the victim? She was wearing too short of a skirt. I'm sorry. That's basically what he said there. So it was completely outrageous to blame the victim. You can't. I thought that was settled, right? You don't blame the victim for violence. You blame the perpetrator for the violence, right? And so I think that was, there would have been a million different ways differently. But this is, the problem with our information ecosystem, which is, I'm sure not that many people saw what he said, but it got weaponized via algorithm, and it became this thing, right? And that's the problem. The problem, and I am just vehemently, I am not going to lose focus on this. The reason we're at each other's throats are these greedy tech companies and these grifters, these partisan grifters, and cable news is absolutely a part of this. There are a bunch of grifters who have used the incentive structure of algorithms in order to incite. And so we've mainstreamed rhetoric that you and we all know most of us don't behave this way when we're face to face with human beings. But we've otherized people and we dehumanize them online to the extent that somebody thinks maybe I should take matters into my own hands. And you hear all this sort of keyboard strength of, quoting the founding fathers and, the spilling of blood sometimes is necessary for freedom. And it's all this garbage in order to rationalize hatred of another side, when ultimately we've got to get back. Look, we're different than every other country going. We are not based on an ethnicity, despite what that clown senator from Missouri claimed the other day. Boy, that was something that I really wanted to focus on, but there's a million other things going on. But that said that basically that the founding fathers were wrong, that America is not an idea, that he wants it to be this sort of, Judeo-Christian nationalistic mindset, and that's what the founders wanted, some patriarchy like this. But we're an extraordinarily diverse country, which means, we've got to figure out how to govern for everybody, and you incrementally move. This is why I'm a big believer. You start in the center. Doesn't mean you're a centrist. You start in the center in order to move things along slowly. And when you try to move radically, you do radicalize your political opponents. And then once political opponents get radicalized, they don't make sound decisions. And then you throw in an information ecosystem that basically just constantly bombards the most politically active people with nut picking. It's my favorite new expression, nut picking, which means you take a nut from some nutty thing that somebody who's supposedly on Team Red or Team Blue, and you surface it up and said, this is representative of the entire movement over there. And it's just one nut saying something stupid. And then it gets so, and that's what that Matthew Dowd comment made. It was a stupid comment made by someone who's way out of touch with America, by the way, and has been for quite some time. But it was nut picking by the right to make it this supercharged, see, this is all of MSNBC, right? So yeah, I think MSNBC had no choice but to fire him. But let's, all of it, anybody that has curated their media to make money rather than to sort of be honest, they also have dirty hands today.
I wonder what you think about the president's order that flags be flown at half-mast throughout the weekend to honor or in honor of Charlie Kirk, several Democratic governors, just to name a few, Keogh in Missouri, Bashar in Kentucky, Moore in Maryland, have all agreed to do that.
Shapiro, Polis.
Shapiro, yeah, it's a lot of Democratic governors. I can only imagine if you're gay or trans or Black American, this may be a little tough for you.
But the point is that we can't just selectively do this. Did we lower the flags for the Minnesota lawmakers?
No,
did we lower
not.
the flags for the CDC victims? Did we lower the flags for the, right? And so, again, the thing though that I think the left need to realize is if somebody that was if the Democrats were in charge right now and somebody on the left was assassinated, that a Democratic president would be doing the same thing, and those on the right would be uncomfortable with it, right? And it's sort of like, isn't that part of the problem? Right?
Wait, doing the same thing.
I look at it this way. I look at it this way. Doing the same
thing. You mean lowering the flags?
But I'm lowering the flags. This is the way I would look at it. I'm mourning for America today. I'm mourning for the fact that we have a culture that's broken, that the country might be broken, that we have a political leadership that is intentionally exploiting our anger at each other, that we have a president who doesn't care that he's divided the country as much as he's divided this country, and doesn't at all accept the premise that his words contribute to this climate as well. So, I guess I would be lowering the flags, and I would encourage people, we're mourning, what happened to us is just, this is bad for the country.
Yeah.
So it's a moment that we, this is bad for freedom for everybody. That's the problem. That's the way I think that's the way I'm looking at it. I understand I understand where you were going with that, Marjorie. I get it, but I think we got to see it as that actually was a strike against the freedom for all of us.
We agree. Chuck Todd, thanks for your time. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Tough. I don't envy that you guys are having to be live and do this all day.
Yeah,
we're actually glad to be here.
I don't miss this.
Yeah.
I don't miss the daily, being on air, and I would just caution listeners and watchers, people sometimes might say something stupid on air, but with the anchors, it's tough.
Good to see you,
Chuck. Thank you.
Be well,
bye, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Too.
We have been speaking, obviously, with political analyst Chuck Todd, host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at the chucktoddcast.com or youtube.com at the Chuck Toddcast. Chuck is also the host of Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the Noosphere platform. Excuse me, I said that wrong. Noosphere platform. Next, we'll open the lines to get your reaction to the Charlie Kirk assassination. 877-301-8970, BPR and GBH and NEPM.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, David Duchovny. The actor, singer, songwriter, novelist, and now poet joins me to talk about his debut collection. Titled About Time, his poems consider family, memory, and aging all through the shifting lens of time. They're provocative, challenging, and not without their moments of humor. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering dynamic short programs tailored for mid-career professionals looking to build expertise in innovation, leadership, and technology. Details at executive.mit.edu. And Chevalier Theater in Medford Square, presenting An Unforgettable Night with Mary Chapin Carpenter and Brandy Clark. Thursday evening, September 25th at 7. Tickets and info at chevaliertheater.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow with Live Music Friday. We're going to be talking about the assassination of Charlie Kirk for at least much of the first 2 hours today, not the third, so we want to offer some space for you to weigh in too. And let me just say up front, because I'm sure that the emotions will run high, we hope everybody's mourning the violence and mourning the loss of life, but the discussion needs to reflect the real world, too. In case you missed it, some background, we touched on this a second ago. Charlie Kirk co-founded the far-right activist group Turning Point USA when he was a teenager, more than 10 years ago, as an attempt to foster conservative connections on college campuses. He was a key Trump supporter advisor since 2016, again, when he was a kid. His views captured the minds of conservative young people, helped propel Trump to victory. Trump has said that twice. He also roiled the left. He said things in recent years, like, as we mentioned, Martin Luther King was awful, not a good person. Civil Rights Act was a huge mistake because it ushered in DEI policies.
Kamala Harris was a communist.
Yeah, he's spoken out against trans people, against gay people. Black pilots will play some sound in a minute. Yesterday, at 31 years old, he was killed. He was speaking on a college campus in Utah. The shooter remains at large. When we speak to Juliette Kayyem in the 12 o'clock hour, we'll get the latest on the search for that guy. We just want your reaction to all this. Chuck Todd said it will get worse before it gets worse. Do you subscribe to that? Is this going to lead even more political violence, which has become the language of political debate in much of this country, or is there a possibility that the violence will be toned down, as at least some few politicians are arguing that it must be? The number is 877-301-8970 is the number. You know, Chuck was talking about the only president who has the inability or unwillingness to try to unite people. Do you remember George Bush, who was not wildly popular right after 9/11? 90% approval rating. The country totally came together around the leadership of a guy who was not that popular president, because he seized the moment in what many people, at least in the beginning, thought was the right way.
He also went to a mosque to show that we should not be blaming Muslims for the actions of a few of them. And there was kind of this black humor joke, no pun intended. Well, I guess maybe the pun was intended. With all these stories for a while that black guys used to, young black men used to be the most feared people in America, and then for a while it was young Muslim men and groups that were the most feared people in America. So Bush tried to dissuade people from feeling that way. And I remember back to the Challenger disaster when you thought, what the heck can Reagan possibly say that will make people feel better? Remember, he talked about, these astronauts, this is what they wanted to do, to slip the surly bounds of Earth and touch the face of God, and how that they died doing what they wanted to do. I mean, that was an incredible speech he gave that day.
Whose poem was that? That was so beautiful.
I forget the poem, the author of the poem, the poet, I should say, but I know it was Peggy Noonan, his speechwriter, who still writes for the Wall Street Journal, who picked that poem to fit our staff looked up who wrote that poem.
Well, we have a lot of calls, as you lines are totally jammed, as you might expect. Let's try to get through as many of them as we can. Jack in a car, you're first. Hello.
Howdy. Hey, I wanted to just comment on exactly the thing you mentioned that Chuck Todd said, and that it's going to get worse before it gets worse, and it's just death spiral down. And wonder why somebody can't convince the leader of our nation, who is really at this point the only person that can change this direction.
I agree.
Why people within this administration can't convince him to take that kind of position that you saw from the Obamas, or even from the John McCain's shutting down the woman who wanted him to say bad things about Obama.
At that town meeting.
Yeah, that was
one of the great moments of our lifetimes. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's not a left or a right thing in terms of people's capacity to be able to do this, or the responsibility to do it. But why can't this administration convince this leader that this is what needs to happen? And I mean, it may be a rhetorical question, right? That it may be that this is what they want, but it just seems so absurd. And to what end?
I'm not sure. Can I interrupt you, Jack? I don't think when you say it may be what they want, I don't think it's what they want. I mean, I am not a student of Donald Trump, but I know a little bit about his history, thanks to people like Michael Kirk and the wonderful documentaries he's done about his whole life over there at Frontline. Can you cite one example in his lifetime where President private citizen where he attempted to be a unifying force? That's not how he was trained by Roy Cohn. That's not his MO,
No,
you know?
I can't.
So
no, very few of us.
it's not in his DNA.
We can cite that people had convinced him to do things that they convinced him to be was in his self-interest, his best self-interest.
Listen.
For instance, Nobel Peace Prize, right? Win the Nobel Peace Prize by turning around the American culture.
You know, Jack, that's an excellent call. By the way, I was not a big fan. I'm sure no surprise, George W. Bush, when he stood on the mound of rubble with that with his arm around that firefighter after 9/11, on 9/11 today, by the way, and said, "We hear you." And that whole little speech,
he promised revenge, is what he promised.
I think that was a unifying thing, and people wanted revenge. Obviously, it was the wrong revenge.
Exactly.
But it wasn't that day, Marjorie. By the way, this poem. Thank you, colleagues. High Flight. John Gillespie McGee Jr. was the poet in that beautiful thing that Reagan did. Tammy and Quincy. Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Quickly, I want to follow up on what Chuck said about the problems with our current government. Just the fact that Kash Patel announced, late in the afternoon yesterday that they had a suspect, quote unquote, in custody, and then had to retract that later, shows the ineptitude and of this government. I mean, it's just posturing and lack of experience, just so obvious to me when that happened. And I just think that's just going to continue. And the senators and congressmen we have are doing nothing to counter that. Nobody is.
What do you mean by that? There actually were quite a few people who... We have to take a break. We'll actually respond to your thoughts, Tammy. We appreciate it. And we're going to talk about Kash Patel and the FBI's performance, particularly Patel's with Juliette Kayyem at 12:45. Thank you so much for the call.
Yeah, the people who got fired from the FBI, at least one of them that was on TV last night, was sort of shocked that Kash Patel would say there was a suspect in custody when they were still questioning that person to find out if they had anything to do with the crime. And then 2 people were questioned and 2 people were released. Anyway, we're going to keep talking about this for a while longer. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. More of your calls and texts are next.
Made headlines everywhere this year after President Trump said he wanted to acquire the island for the U.S. In Greenland, that sparked talk of independence from Denmark.
Many Greenlandic people, including me, hoping for independence in our country in future.
But it's complicated. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug. Rugs and the people who know them. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Live Music Friday. As I'm sure you know by now, we're not at the library Tuesday because Monday and Tuesday we'll be broadcasting from NEPM in Springfield. Governor Patrick joins us in the studio, as does the Attorney General for Ask the AG, Congressman Jim McGovern. A ton of wonderful guests, mostly from Western Mass. And Mayor Wu at the library on the 23rd, Governor Healy at the library on the 30th. If you're just tuning in, we're obviously talking about the assassination yesterday of Charlie Kirk We want your reaction, your thoughts at 877-301-8970.
Charlie Kirk, we're going to play a little sound from him in just a second, but he was accused of being xenophobic, racist. He decried DEI programs. He was briefly separated himself from Trump on the Epstein files. He said he wanted him to be released, and then he backed off that, went back into the fold on that, and said he trusted the Trump administration. He also did things like threatened Joni Ernst and other Republicans if they
Senator
didn't
from Iowa.
Yes, if they didn't do things like support Pete Hegseth as head of the Department of Defense. So he was really very influential in the Trump administration. He also went after Martin Luther King. He went after the Civil Rights Act. He went after Kamala Harris. He went after gays, gay rights in general, and really went after trans rights in general. Here is some of his controversial remarks.
We basically told a great generation of young women, don't get married, don't have kids. People get mad when I say that. Well, it's just true. If you're in your early 30s, I'm sorry. It's like you're not as attractive in the dating pool as you were in the early 20s.
If I move my appendix and you're a black lesbian, the NCAA is a perverted organization. They platformed a biological male who won a national championship. Someone should have just took care of it the way we used to take care of things in the 1950s or 60s.
By the way, he was speaking about the trans athlete issue when he said we should have been taken care of. The issue was not his position on trans athletes in college sports, but what should happen to them,
trans
as
athletes
he said at the end there.
In college sports, yeah. 877-301-8970 is the number. Let's go to Miles in Boston. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Miles.
Hey guys, it's good to hear from you talking about this today. It's been an absolutely gutting 12 hours just taking this in. I share many of the sentiments that people have expressed about the rising tide of political violence in our country right now. But something that really jumps out at me already is much of the discourse about the assassination of Charlie Kirk is centered around the idea that there is, dignity in being human that should be respected in times like this. And I fully agree with that sentiment. And what I am concerned about here is that something is being flattened, which is that one of the great political divides of our time is that idea that all human beings have dignity that should be respected.
Great point.
It has to be said that Kirk himself was a part of the political project that was trying to take dignity away from many people in this country that Trump is very much a part of. And I'm not saying that is at all any justification for what was happened. Nobody should face violence for speech like this. But Jim, I really appreciated that you brought this up in that conversation with Chuck, because again, I think that is being flattened in our appraisal of this.
That was a spectacular phone call. Thanks, Miles, thanks for your analysis of this picture. We really appreciate it. And by the way, we shouldn't have to do one of the, what this reminds me of? This reminds me of whenever you say something bad about how Netanyahu is murdering Palestinians, you have to say how horrible October 7th was, as if everybody who's sane and decent doesn't know it. Same situation here. Political violence is never, ever, ever acceptable in any setting, but it doesn't take away what Miles was talking about who Charlie Kirk was. And as Chuck said, you don't blame the victim. We're not blaming the victim. We're mourning the violence, mourning the loss to his family and his friends.
Well, and he's when I read he had a baby, he's not even a year old.
It's horrible.
And another child who I think is 3 years old. The baby's going to be, I think, as I said, not even a year old.
Can you answer, before we get back to the next call, can you answer the question that I answered before from the caller?
What?
I think it was the first caller, maybe. Why can't Trump, because he is brilliant strategically at time, why can't he seize the moment once in his whole life and say what everybody would like to hear from a leader right now is we are going to tone down the rhetoric. There has been political violence, whether it's the attack on Pelosi's husband, the killing of that elected official in Minnesota. There has been the assassination attempt on me, the killing of Kirk. But we all have to work together. I mean, I'm not saying everybody be forgiving for all the sins.
Because there aren't people around him anymore to keep him from doing that. This is a man who ran...
But he didn't do it in the first term either.
What are you talking about? He ridiculed people that were disabled. He went after war heroes.
He didn't attempt to unite people in the first term either. But why can't he take this moment where he is center stage?
I think because the people that are around him are his son, John Jr., J.D. Vance,
Steve
all
Bannon,
people that were very...
Steve Miller.
Katie Miller's wife, Steve Miller's wife.
You mentioned
Katie,
this.
Did you hear what she had to say about this?
Share with
she
people.
said, you called us Hitler, you called us Nazis, you called us racist, you have blood on your hands. That's what her reaction to this horrible assassination. Elon Musk posted on X, the left is the party of murder. That was not very helpful, I would say. So I think he surrounded himself by people that amplify his worst instincts. Otherwise, he never would have said that.
Joan,
what do you think?
I just don't think it's part of his DNA, as I said.
Exactly.
We've never seen a moment where he chose unity over division. As a private citizen, as a candidate, or as an elected official, he just doesn't have it in him, even though it would accrue to his benefit. I'm not suggesting all the people critical of his policies all of a sudden say, oh, I forgive him for all his sins. But there are some people who would say, here's a man who rose to the moment.
Well, I think
he can't.
Many people who support him don't want him to rise to the moment.
That's another wonderful point. Joan in a car, that's a wonderful point. Joan in a car, hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hello.
Two things I want to say.
Please.
I feel like at this point the flag should be lowered all the time because there is so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's ridiculous. And the second thing is, I was also kind of upset when you had Chuck Todd on because I'm a grandmother, I'm a mother, I'm a Democrat. And I know that Charlie Kirk has a mother, and he's got young children, and this is all terrible, horrific. But at the same time, and I know there's the First Amendment right, but how do you hold people accountable for what they say? I mean, I'm not blaming the victim, but I think there's got to be some accountability. This will continue to happen.
Well, by the way, Joan, I know you're not trying to blame the victim. You sort of sound like you are. I know it's not your intent. The answer is you beat the hell out of them in elections. If it turns out the Kirk-Trump axis is one, they share many points of view, is one that one finds reprehensible, as you just said, what do you do about it? You don't elect Donald Trump. You elect somebody who doesn't believe those kinds of things, assuming we have fair and free elections in a year. So there is a solution, and the American people chose Donald Trump. That obviously Kirk is part of that movement, even though he preceded it. And this is who we are. So thanks for the call. But there are ways to counter this.
But it is a sad state of affairs that we've normalized school shootings now. They get very little attention. There was one yesterday simultaneously.
Yeah, mention that, by the way. Like
to the
2
Charlie
hours
Kirk
after
killing
the
in
Kirk
Evergreen,
killing.
Colorado.
Yeah.
There were 2 children were wounded. I don't have the latest. I think that's where we are in that. I don't think any more than that. John Miller, who's a great commentator, former police officer, knows everything about law enforcement, talks about every 2 or 3 weeks. We just had this horrible shooting at the Catholic school a few weeks ago where those little kids were killed. We had you mentioned the guy that walked into 345 Park Avenue with a gun and went up there and shot somebody, thinking it was at the NFL thing.
NFL, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had people have mentioned the Minnesota politician and her husband who were shot to death in their own home. We had even people were cheering, and we probably should not have cheered if you didn't like Donald Trump. The attacks on the Tesla dealerships, that were damaged. We had the Israeli embassy, that 2 young couple that were engaged coming out of the Israeli embassy. They were shot down. So we've just normalized school shooting. We've normalized massacres of people in the United States. It's kind of, you have to get over 12 people killed now in a shot before you get much attention?
It's because of the non-physical violent rhetoric is even violent. As so many people have said in the last, 24 hours, or I guess a little bit less, is you have to hate the opponent. You can't just criticize the opponent for his or her positions, but you have to hate him as well. Yeah, let me tell you one last story, by the way, before we get back to the calls, about the inability of some, Trump with that, the left extremists are the cause of all these problems. The guy who's head of CPAC was on the radio with Michelle Martin this morning. We don't have time to play the sound, but I just want to say it was a very civil conversation until she appropriately said, I think, when you were on Newsmax yesterday, you were blaming the radical left for this. He didn't like that very much, and he proceeds to say, slap back at her and say, this is why NPR was defunded. She pointed out a fact, and her point, and she elucidated it too, was there's violent rhetoric on the left and the right. Let's call it out everywhere, not just like you did yesterday. That's why you were defunded. It was a great moment. You should listen to it. 877-301-8970.
Jesse in Cambridge, thank you for calling.
Hi, Jesse.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I have a very simple matter of logic that occurred to me.
Yeah.
And that if the assassin thought that eliminating a bad guy was going to make things better, it's obvious that that's the opposite of what happened. That things didn't get better according to the assassin's ideas or standards by eliminating this guy, but he made it a whole lot worse, which is kind of obvious.
Yeah, but you're operating on I think you're right, but you're operating on the assumption that this is like a rational thought process by people who engage in political violence, and I would say by definition, it's not, don't you think, Jesse?
I am educated by everything that everyone says on this program today, because I'm getting a little choked up. It's a very tragic mystery to me. I don't have answers. I don't have solutions, but I do notice that so often, rather than someone saying, "Oh, I'm angry at so-and-so," they describe how they want to disfigure or end the person's life.
Yeah.
And that's just like common, that it passes as common language. It doesn't stop being horrific to me.
Well said, Jesse. Thank you much for the call. By the way, our colleagues are saying we have enough time. We should play this sound from Schlapp. And by the way, again, I want to say how it happens is NPR's Michelle Martin mentions that yesterday Schlapp, again, he worked for George W. and for Trump, and he's head of CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Group, mentioned two things. One, that on Newsmax yesterday he'd said it was the left that was the cause of all this, and she said, goes on to say, well, it seems to be an equal opportunity problem. They set fire to Josh Shapiro's house, the Pennsylvania governor, Democrat, attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, the killing of the Democrat in Minnesota. And here's what ensued. First voice you'll hear is Schlapp, and then a little bit more from Martin at the end.
But I just want to, I want to chastise you a little bit here. Someone who's very close to my family and to the conservative movement was assassinated yesterday. We haven't seen really anything like this. Somebody who's not even in elected office. I don't think this is the right moment for you to say to me that I am not sufficiently concerned about violence that happens from anyone. I think this is a moment to reflect on the life of a young man who made a big difference, and a lot of people are mourning it. Yes. And it is the wrong time for you to start assigning blame and to say I should have better commentary.
Oh, forgive me, but didn't you surface that issue? And am I not listening to you?
I can understand why you're getting defunded. This is outrageous.
I'm sorry
this
that you
young
feel
man.
that way.
It is outrageous. 877, but just not the way that he saw it. Sheila, and you're in Rhode Island. Thank you much for calling us. We appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Jim and Marjorie.
Thanks.
I guess the point that I would like to make is that it's pretty obvious by the coverage, even on the press, like NBC News last night, 30 minutes of Charlie Kirk. I was incensed. But the fact that so much press has been given to somebody that aligns with the Republican Conservative Party, as opposed to no coverage on the school shooting in Evergreen, no coverage on the Congresswoman in Minnesota. You know, the list goes on and on and on. It's like, and the moral outrage on the Republican side, to me, is just crazy. It's like, where is your outrage when there's a school shooting or anybody that gets assassinated? It just seems so hypocritical. And anyways, I could blow.
Hey, Sheila, to make your point, do you know when I found out? This is my own fault, I guess. I didn't know about the school shooting till we had our staff meeting this morning. I'm embarrassed to say that, but I think it underlines your point.
I would disagree a little bit, though, Sheila. I think there was pretty good coverage of the Minnesota killing. I mean,
at the time, the
yes,
state
I
representative.
did think there was. It was so shocking that someone would go up and ring their doorbell, or if he did ring the doorbell, he showed up at the front door in any case, and the politician was murdered, her husband was murdered.
I don't think it was quite like this, but I agree with you.
Yeah, and the guy went down the street. Yeah. And the 2 students our staff checked were critically injured in that school shooting yesterday, and the male student killed himself and died of his injuries on
Sheila,
Wednesday night.
thank you, though, for your thoughts. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8097
I think part of the coverage, and I'm not going to defend this excessive coverage, but was his closeness to Trump and the impact he had on the election. He's a big election denier. He went around the country gaining, the confidence of young people. We all know that young white men were a big deal in this election in terms of putting Trump over the top. We talked about the impact of Joe Rogan. Well, Charlie Kirk was right up there in what he had to say, and I think that was part of the reason that he was. As I said at the beginning of the hour, he was like Trump himself called him a fourth son, and he was the person that really pushed J.D. Vance as well to be Trump's vice president. So
with Trump's kid, right? With Donald Trump Jr.,
with Don Jr. So there was that. Matter of fact, I read where his father, that would be Kirk's father, was one of the architects that built Trump Tower, designed Trump Tower in New York City. Yeah, and he applied to West Point and didn't get in, and then he decided not to go to school at all and to start this turning point. And he was 31 years old, and he started this at the age of 18 and managed to get massive numbers of donations from very influential Republicans.
If you weren't listening when we had Chuck Todd on at the beginning of the show, not only do you say it's going to get worse before it gets worse, we're not going to play it again. We played sound from Trump last night in the Oval Office, and in 30 seconds of his 4-minute talk, he referred to the radical left as being the problem around political violence in this country twice. Didn't even hint at the possibility that, as Michelle Martin said, it's an equal opportunity problem.
You know what we should mention, too, that among the people that said that the war started, Steve Bannon said that, Alex Jones said it, and, Jesse Waters said the death, he's a Fox guy, said the news need to be avenged. Enrique Tarrio, who used to be the head.
It has to be avenged, he said?
Yes, here's what he said. This is Jesse Waters on Fox News. We're sick, we're sad, we're angry, we're resolute, we're going to avenge Charlie's death in the way Charlie would have wanted to be avenged. That's what he said. But Enrique Tarrio, who used to be the head of the Proud Boys, who was involved in January 6th and went to jail until Trump let him out. I think he got 20 years. Talked about this as a war as well, which caused some people to be concerned that militias like the Proud Boys might be.
Trump's taking them on with that rhetoric.
Yeah.
No? Well, Joan in Salem, hi.
I believe you're talking to Joe in Salem.
Joe, yes. That's what I meant. Just want to make sure you're paying attention, Joe. Hi.
Well, J&J, what the heck.
Whatever. Hello.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I've listened to your program for a long time, and this is the first time I got through, and it's been a real gratifying experience to listen to some sanity on the news.
You're terrific. Thank you, Joe, for saying that.
I've got a lot of concerns, but the political assassination and the violence is only a reflection of the United States here and now. I would like to see a lot more information on factual information. For instance, as you just mentioned, there's a lot of people saying this left conspiracy to assassinate Charlie Kirk. We don't even know who it is. Mm-hmm. I reference back to Wallace back in the 60s, who was shot at and horribly wounded by one of his own followers.
George Wallace.
We don't know.
Yeah.
George Wallace, yes. So there's a lot of emotional rhetoric going on that promotes violence and glorifies and asks for violence. And I would submit that our culture, this political violence, which isn't acceptable, is actually a manifestation of who we are. Under the news yesterday, Poland was attacked, and its skies were incurred. We're bankrolling Israel to bomb 6 or 7 different sovereign nations. Violence needs to be looked at much more carefully and not just used as an arguing point.
Joe, we're really glad you got through finally. That was a really thoughtful call, and we're only getting rid of you because your phone is breaking
And
up.
we're
By the way,
also-
the Poland thing, if people weren't paying attention, maybe
Yeah.
they missed it, is Russian drones flying into Polish airspace. I don't know if Donald Trump has responded to that, and I know he was talking about the killing of those 5 or 6 Hamas negotiators in Doha by Netanyahu as
You know
well.
what we have to stop saying, and Joe raised a good point, that this is not who we are.
Totally right.
It is who we are.
are.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said that yesterday. This is not who we are. Well, I think we have to come to grips with the fact that this is who we are. It's not an aberration anymore. Thank goodness you're still in the minority in terms of whether your place of business or your school or yourself, your body is going to be attacked. But this is more and more who we are. Anyway,
We
we're
should
out
also,
of time.
before you go, we just say that in Trump's 9/11 speech this morning, we should have mentioned this. He said he would award Charlie Kirk the Presidential
Right.
Medal of Freedom
Correct.
posthumously.
Okay, thanks for listening in Eddie PM. The show continues up here in Boston. After the noon news, we're going to be joined by former Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral, former Education Secretary Paul Reville, and Juliette Kayyem on the security issues involving the attack on Charlie Kirk yesterday in Utah. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Thanks for the folks at NEPM for tuning in. We're going to be out there Monday and Tuesday. Meanwhile, we're streaming here at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village. Now playing the story of comedic legend Joan Rivers. Joan, through September 20th. Tickets at capeplayhouse.com. An unlikely group of spies go behind enemy lines to turn the tide in America's fight for independence. Catch a new episode of Turn, Washington's Spies, tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 2 of BPR. We'll start the noon hour with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral to discuss the state's chronic shortage of public defenders, how the Supreme Court has become Trump's personal law firm, and her analysis of Wu's preliminary landslide.
I'm Marjorie Egan, then it's former Massachusetts Education Secretary Paul Reville, and how young conservatives on college campuses are responding to the shooting of Charlie Kirk and the impacts of ICE family separations on schools around the states. And we'll end the hour with Harvard national security expert Juliette Kayyem discussing the growing normalization of political violence, how to prevent it, and more. That's all next on Second Hour BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The gunman suspected of killing right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk at an outdoor rally in Utah yesterday is still at large. Investigators say they believe the shooter is a college-age man who blended in well at Utah Valley University. NPR's Kirk Sigler has more from the UVU campus in Orem.
At a news conference, authorities said they have surveillance video of the suspect moving through campus and onto the roof where he fired from, then running after the attack into a nearby neighborhood. FBI Special Agent in Charge Robert Bowles said investigators found a high-powered bolt-action rifle in a wooded area where the suspected gunman fled. Bowles said police do not know how far he may have run or whether he's still in Utah.
I can tell you that this was a targeted event. We don't believe that the community is at risk. However, we are exhausting every resource to find him.
Asked whether recent high turnover at the FBI was hindering the hunt for the suspect, Bowles says his Salt Lake City field office has the resources it needs. Kirk Sigler, NPR News, Orem, Utah.
Still expressing disbelief. He planned to speak with Kirk's family this afternoon. He also says he will posthumously award the slain conservative influencer the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Kirk was among Trump's most prominent allies. Democratic political leaders are also condemning the shooting, saying political violence in any form should be denounced by all Americans. Today marks 24 years since the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and annual commemorations are underway. At Ground Zero, New York City, the Pentagon, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the attack claimed nearly 3,000 lives. President Trump and other elected leaders have been taking part in 9/11 observances. In other news, inflation rose last month as consumers paid more for both groceries and gasoline. NPR's Scott Horsley has details.
Consumer prices in August were up 2.9% from a year ago. That's a sharper annual increase than the previous month. Prices rose 0.4% between July and August, fueled by rising costs for rent, groceries, and gasoline. Americans also paid more last month for clothing, airfares, and new and used cars. August was the month when President Trump imposed higher tariffs on many U.S. trading partners, which may have contributed to higher prices for imported goods like coffee. A federal appeals court has ruled most of those import taxes are illegal, but they remain in effect pending a review by the U.S. Supreme Court. The High Court said this week it would hear arguments in the tariff case in early November. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Flags throughout the Commonwealth were lowered to half-staff today to honor the victims of the 9/11-2001 terrorist attacks. However, those flags will continue to be at half-staff through the weekend for another reason. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey ordered the American flag and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts flag to be lowered to half-staff at all state buildings beginning today until sunset on September 14th due to the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The 31-year-old Kirk was shot and killed during an event at a Utah university yesterday, and as of earlier today, the person responsible for the shooting was still at large, although authorities now say they have recovered the rifle that was used, and they have a description of what the suspected killer looks like. For years, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York City has marked the anniversary of the September 11th attacks with its tribute and light, marked by two blue beams on the site of the Twin Towers and joined by buildings across New York City that light up in blue to express their solidarity. Last year, for the first time, Boston joined in, lighting up 9 buildings across the city. And tonight, Thursday night, Boston's skyline will once again shine with the blue lights of solidarity, but this year even brighter. Over a dozen landmarks from Fenway Park to the Zakim Bridge will join in. Other locations include Atlantic Wharf, One Center Plaza, One International Place, the Prue, UMass Boston, Boston City Hall, and the Museum of Science was just confirmed last night. Meanwhile, this tradition is beginning to grow beyond Boston for the first time this year. Locations in Cleveland and Minneapolis will also participate. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru. The 2025 Subaru Outback features symmetrical all-wheel drive, plus standard safety features like EyeSight driver assist technology. Learn more at Subaru.com/Outback.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with a great live Music Friday edition. We're doing 2 broadcasts out in Springfield with our NEPM affiliate Monday and Tuesday. Former Governor Deval Patrick, Congressman Jim McGovern, and the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Cabral, will join us. The mayor will be back with us September 23rd at the library. Maura Healey will be at the library with us September 30th. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now by Andrea Cabral, former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary and former Sheriff of Suffolk County and a BPR contributor. Hello there, Andrea.
Hi, Hi, how are you?
We're
Hey,
good,
Andrea, good to talk to you. So we've talked to you off the air about this, but we wanted to share some of that conversation with our listeners and with you. Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins has stepped away from his job after this federal indictment charging him with extorting a cannabis company, Ascend, and Tompkins has pleaded not guilty. You're a longtime friend of Tompkins. He succeeded you as Suffolk County Sheriff, and you used to run a local branch of Ascend, and obviously you were not accused of anything involved with this, but can you tell us about this whole situation? What's going on, and what do you think?
Well, I actually can't. I mean, I'm a potential witness in the case, so I'm not going to comment on it. I think it's a little bit different if I am, commenting on an ongoing case as a commentator. But I know that regardless of which side you represent, whether it is the state or the federal government or the defense, the last thing you want are potential witnesses sort of bloviating on the air about their opinions on it. And I think I just, as a lawyer, I have too much respect for the process. So I'm not going to say anything about it. I will reserve whatever I, need to say to, interviews. If I am not a witness in the case, or, I'm certainly happy to talk to you about it then. Or if I am, then after the proceedings are done, I'm happy to have a full discussion on it. But I think before that, it's not really appropriate.
So we will have that full discussion, good, when either you're out of this or it concludes. We're talking to Andrea Cabral.
Then let's switch to the other topic we talked about for the first hour, but we want to get your reaction as well, Andrea Cabral. Yesterday, a very conservative right-wing activist, podcaster, influencer on college campuses, Charlie Kirk, was gunned down in Utah outside at a campus rally. What's your reaction?
Well, I think I'll start by saying that unless we're all going to acknowledge that conservatism is synonymous with all of the other isms that are undesirable, like racism and sexism, and anti-LGBTism or BTQism. Just to characterize Charlie Kirk as a conservative or even ultra-conservative commentator, I think does a disservice to traditional conservatism, which many aspects of which I disagree with. Charlie Kirk was an influencer. He gained popularity in large part by aligning himself with President Trump. And just hearing, just before I came on, that Trump is going to award him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which I think he's also giving to Rudy Giuliani.
It is.
There really aren't words to describe how utterly debased our national accolades have become by this president, sort of giving them away to anyone and anyone who aligns themselves with him. But beyond that, and I'm not commenting at all on saying it in any way that it's appropriate that Charlie Kirk was shot or that he should have been shot. Of course not. Although I will reserve my thoughts and prayers for the school children over the last several decades who have been shot in their schools and people who have been shot in malls and hotels and casinos because we won't do anything about gun control. I'm not suggesting that he should have been shot. What I'm saying is that lionizing a person who is so nakedly bigoted in thought, word, and deed, and making him sort of this martyr to the MAGA cause is so completely inappropriate, up to and including awarding him a national accolade that has usually been reserved for people who have made a genuine contribution to American life and to the American people, or to our form of government, or to our foreign policy or domestic policy, is just astonishing to me, but not surprising. Shocking, but not surprising.
Talking to Andrea Cabral. So, Andrea, talk about hard transitions here. When the Emerson poll came out about a week before the preliminary election, and it had Mayor Wu leading Kraft by 50 points. Most of the commentators said, well, clearly she's got a big lead, but it's not 50 points. And they were right. It was only 49 points. She won the preliminary by an stunning 49 points. What do you think is the takeaway from that?
Well, the first takeaway, I think, for everyone is to look at the total number of votes cast in this preliminary election. And I don't have the very last number. How many total? Did you know how many total votes were cast?
It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 or 19 or 20%. Is that right? Oh, you mean the votes, not the percentage?
The number, yeah.
I'll look it up while you were talking. Go ahead.
Compare that to the number of registered voters in the city of Boston. And I think the first takeaway is we're still not getting it when it comes to how integral voting is to the continuation of democracy. The fact that you can have, we consider a 20% turnout to be sort of a victory, right? It's 20%. It means 80% of eligible voters didn't turn out to vote in this election, and we can't seem to get people to vote, whether it's because they feel like it's not a real contest, so who cares, or they decided they don't, like either candidate or whatever it might be. No one is seeing the obligation to figure it out and cast the vote, because that's what democracy requires. And I think that that's a very bad harbinger.
Little over 90,000 total votes.
Right. Out of however many, and I think it's many, many, many more eligible voters in the city of Boston. So I think that's the first takeaway. I think the second takeaway is the question that most people raised when Josh Kraft initially announced that he was going to run, and the first question people asked was why? Because he's very popular in the nonprofit world, and he's devoted much of his time and energy and money to that. And they expected to get an answer to that question about why he was running, why he thought, what concrete ideas and plans and strategies he had in place that would make people want to vote for him. And I think his inability to answer that question consistently, sort of succinctly, and sometimes not at all, was a problem. But we also discussed that there were lots of issues with the campaign and some stumbles and missteps that a campaign as well funded as this, both internally funded and then also supported by PACs, was making lots of, and I know campaigns and PACs don't align, but
allegedly don't align. Legally are not allowed to align, but
right.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I get it. I understand that. The stumbles were sort of what you would not have expected for he had some veteran folks, assigned with his campaign. And the last one I think happened, Jim, we were hosting together. And it was about putting out campaign material that said that, Adam Schiff had endorsed him and various other Congress people had endorsed him and they literally had to sort of say publicly, no, we didn't, which is, embarrassing and doesn't happen very often. So there were things like that as well. But I think it was fundamentally an inability to offer a concrete path forward and a good rationale for why he was running.
Yeah, that was the question I thought to myself.
Your mic's not on. You have to really yell so she can hear you.
That was the question I thought to myself.
Still not on.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Okay.
Hi.
That's what I thought to myself a million times over, which is why is he running? And we joked at the beginning that it was all about bike lanes, and that seemed not to be enough to put him over the top.
Well, you did an analysis of why the Kraft campaign came in 49 points behind. Let me just say, if anyone has ever seized the moment, in my opinion, it is Mayor Wu. I mean, from the speech before Congress in Washington, and standing up, I think, as well, both of them have condemned ICE's behavior. I think Wu has said it in the most moving and connectable, if that's a word, I don't know if it is, kind of way about what this community is and should be. And
I absolutely agree. I was not trying to give her campaign and the way it was run short shrift at all. I was sort of answering more about craft, but I think you're absolutely right. And we talked very early on about, especially when she went to Congress, she appeared before Congress as a mother. She had just had a child, brought her child to the floor of Congress, was wearing her Ash Wednesday patches, and took to the floor of Congress to say, we will not yield to this nonsense. And she met the moment. And I think that's a big part of this. People are looking for someone, even if you don't agree with everything that they've done, even if you see, housing affordability is the chief problem facing the city of Boston and that there hasn't been a lot of movement on that, or whatever you think the issue is, people are fraught over the inability of our elected leaders to meet this moment, to stand their ground and to not fold to the Trump administration. And she has made it very clear. She does that as the child of immigrants.
Yeah. Speaking of meeting the moment, you used to be the sheriff of Suffolk County. You flew flags at the jail there. We just heard on the Noontime News that Maura Healey has joined Democratic governors, many of them around the country, acceding to the president's wish to fly flags at half-mast in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in honor or in memory of Charlie Kirk. What do you think of that?
I'm appalled by it. It shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be doing it. I mean, I know that, there are federal buildings where if there's a federal decree, they don't have a huge amount of choice in the matter. I don't think we should certainly be flying state flags at half-mast. I mean, I can't get over even having to say this about how hateful a lot of the things that Charlie Kirk stood for and pushed for and promoted, and the falsehoods and the lies and the conspiracy theories. If that's where we are in this country, that merits having a flag flown at half-staff. It's not being flown at half-staff because someone was addressing a crowd and exercising their right to free speech and was gunned down. It's not being flown at half-mast because someone was, it's a constitutional issue and you're standing up for a constitutional issue. This is for Charlie Kirk. The president's made that very clear. He's an ally of mine, and that's why we're doing it on the federal level. Why we're doing it on the state level is beyond me.
By the way, just a clarification, Henry mentioned this if you weren't listening to Henry Santoro before. The flags are half-staff to begin with because of 9/11.
Correct.
And he went on to say, and they're staying at half-mast, according to Henry's newscast in Massachusetts because of Kirk. Andrea, so many discussions one has on the show with those who are unhappy with what Donald Trump is doing and has done to this country, talk about the midterm elections, talk about, obviously, the next presidential election, which is a long way away. But what they ignore is what Marjorie and I have talked about forever, that people ignore when they vote for president, for the most part, is the Supreme Court. The consensus, which I think is hard to rebut, is this Supreme Court is become, as I read this morning on Drudge or somewhere, Trump's private law firm, which is not really an original thought, but even, Sotomayor have said it, Ketanji Brown Jackson have said it.
All the president's men plus one woman.
That was the line, exactly. And they're there for a long time. Admittedly, two of the more obedient ones, Thomas and Alito, are older, but my assumption is if Trump asked them to step down, they probably would, and it'd be replaced by a 45-year-old version of themselves. When you think about the fact that that court and that point of view, whether Trump is there or not, will outlive Trump by potentially, 20 years, what's the fix for this nation for those who think Trumpism is not the proper course?
I don't think that there is a fix. I actually, there's an amazing piece. I think you may have just mentioned it in Vox.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to.
Which I recommend to people. I actually posted it on my Blue Sky account, saying this is a must read, because when the history of the Roberts Court is written, the sheer destruction of that the Roberts Court and the shadow docket has wreaked on this country, I don't think is repairable. They have that shadow docket, according to the Vox article, and I have no reason to doubt this based on what I've been reading, is that he is 16 for 16. And the shadow docket, if people don't know, is this a relative. It's been around, but it's usually was never used like this, where they issue an opinion that is a non-opinion. They issue a decision that has no opinion backing it, and no one signs it. And a lot of these have been these sort of interim appeals. First of all, if Trump simply asks the Supreme Court to hear an appeal that he wants, whether it is appropriate for them to take the appeal or not, they take it. For him to be 16 out of 16 for a shadow docket on things that just absolutely, they have no business either taking early or intervening in. The Supreme Court historically is known for its refusal to take cases.
Yeah.
Petitions of certiorari are routinely denied. They deny him nothing. They have, as the Vox article points out very comprehensively and very well, it's a very well written article, they have found rights and immunities for this president and his lie nowhere in the Constitution or the law, and they have ignored well-settled law and their own precedent in order to reverse themselves to give him rights. It is the most astounding thing. As a lawyer, it is devastating. And it is the most astounding thing, and certainly in all of my over 40 years of being an attorney, for this country to be facing. But to your point, Trump may go, even though he's not eligible for another term. He may go after this next election. He should be eligible to run again. But what the Supreme Court and the shadow docket under Roberts have done will last, I think, indefinitely.
It's a troubling thought. Can we go from big picture to small picture? Only have 2 minutes left.
Yes.
But I'm so glad the Globe did an editorial on this because I was obsessed with this and then dropped the ball. This treatment, at least in my opinion, of the bar advocates, for those who don't know, these are private lawyers who are not required to represent indigent criminal defendants who are constitutionally entitled to representation, but who do it at painfully reduced rates. They can be making a lot more money in their regular practice. We lag behind every New England state by a lot. The legislature finally agreed to give them, a $10 an hour raise 1 year, $10 raise another. Still, even with that, way below. And understandably, at least to me, a huge percentage of these private lawyers have said, I can't do this anymore. And as a result, not only are some defendants going unrepresented, some people who should not go free, or you wouldn't want to go free, at least at this stage of the process, are. How do you explain the legislature's total denial of the reality of what is needed to do the right thing here? Oops, there she disappears.
Yeah.
There she is.
No, sorry. It's just
okay.
that I'm losing you because of my phone, and I'm just plugging in the charger.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Quickly, in 1 minute, why are they not doing the obvious here and reaching a reasonable level so these people go back to work?
Well, I think it's, because they can. The simple, sort of like, but you are, Blanche, you are in that wheelchair, right? It's whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Yeah.
I think it's because there are plenty of lawyers in the legislature, okay? Let's not kid ourselves. The legislature is full of attorneys. And I think that, they certainly should understand that this isn't a want to have or a nice to have. This
Exactly
is a
right.
must have. And it makes no sense to me digging their heels in on this or not being able to find the money somewhere. It's inexplicable to me. And I think, again, the price that you pay is felt now, but is felt exponentially down the line.
On that note, good to see you, Andrea Cabral. See you next week. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Andrea.
Bye.
Great to talk to you. We've been speaking with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral. Coming up after this quick break, former Massachusetts Education Secretary Paul Reville joins us. How the increased immigration actions in Massachusetts are affecting students and teachers, and students' reading and math scores just keep getting worse. And of course, we'll talk to him about Charlie Kirk, who was huge on college campuses all across America. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPI 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The weekend is coming with stories,
the future survival of an entire species in our hands.
gardening,
Beech trees are lovely native trees.
and DIY delights.
What is an arc fault detector?
If you puncture the jacket of the wire, that can arc to that screw or nail.
What does this have to do with the large boat with all the animals inside?
No, wrong arc, Zach.
That's how we do weekends on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Chevalier Theatre in Medford Square, presenting an intimate evening with Celtic Thunder. Saturday evening, September 20th at 8. Tickets and more information at chevaliertheatre.com. And the Boston Speakers Series, continuing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall with 7 evenings featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow with a great live music Friday and more. Joined now by Paul Reville. Paul's the former Massachusetts Education Secretary and a professor at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education. He also runs the Ed Redesign Lab. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey, Paul, thank you for joining us. We've been talking all day, of course, about the killing yesterday of the influencer, podcaster, right-wing entrepreneur.
Well, he was an entrepreneur.
Well, he was an entrepreneur. That is true.
was.
He started a company that made up to, I think it's $100 million, and Turning Point USA. In any case, big influencer on college campuses all across the country. He was killed at a college campus yesterday. We have someone from Harvard, from the Young Republicans at Harvard, quoted about his impact. What was the deal? How did he manage to amass this massive following at these colleges? I think it's 850 colleges around the United States had a chapter of Turning Point USA.
Well, I mean, he was a charismatic figure. He was articulate. He was willing to engage in discourse. He argued in favor of free speech and open discourse. And on a lot of campuses, conservatives had not felt that they had free reign to express their views and so forth. So
he was right about that, wasn't he? I mean, we've been criticizing him.
There's definitely some truth to that. And so he became kind of a symbol and a leader as far as this, and that helped him because he was good at doing it and engaging with people, however you happen to feel about what his particular perspective was. So I think he became enormously popular, and he obviously had a huge impact in the political sphere by bringing a lot of those young voters back into the party and making it fashionable to be a young Republican. And so, I think there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of shock at the whole situation on campuses among those kinds of groups. He will be seen as a martyr. This will energize that movement and I think empower greater expression in those places. And, and I share some of the concerns that you've been talking about in the past hour about where this is going to lead us and what's going to be the impact. But we'll have to see. It's too early to say what the impact is going to be on campuses.
Well, one thing is not too early to say is what the impact of the ICE explosion has been on lots of families in this country. We've had people call us in the last several months here, and obviously we've all read about them too and heard them. Don't go to their doctor's appointment. They're worried if they're going to get snatched. Don't go to work. They're going to get snatched. Don't want to send their kid to school. Schools used to be what are called sensitive locations, places where ICE would not go. That is no longer the case. Is this more than a sort of episodic problem? We hear random examples, but my sense is that a lot of families are really concerned about sending their kid to school.
Or daycare.
And when the kid gets home,
getting actually snatched
right.
after
and
they
the parents
drop
aren't
the kid
there,
off
right?
at daycare.
Yeah.
No question. I mean, in any district with any significant immigrant enrollment, there are concerns, and if you speak anecdotally, I don't know of the data being aggregated, but I mean, we're dealing with attendance problems across the education sphere generally. But in all those districts, we're hearing that, their numbers for English language learners and immigrant students are down relative to attendance, and it's got to be attributable to this kind of pressure that is increasing kind of pressure on families and a sense of trauma and fear, and people aren't going out, they aren't going to school, they aren't getting the services and supports they need to be effective if they were coming to school.
Our colleague Mark Hers interviewed some superintendent from somewhere, and my apologies, I just don't recall, who said, we're doing what we can to protect these kids. What can a school leader do to protect a kid or his family, or her family, from ICE doing what ICE does?
Well, I mean, I think it has to do with the procedures they have in place, and different school systems have different procedures in terms of how they're going to respond if they have ICE at the front door, and if they're going to demand a warrant, or if they're going to bring in local law enforcement to help draw the line on that. I think.
But you can't protect the kid from the loss of a parent outside the building, obviously, right?
No, you can't. No, but you can put in place the sort of planning and support services and safety net that you'd want in place should that happen. So I think schools can be helpful in connecting young people with agencies and organizations and people in their communities and people on the guidance staff and so forth who can help the families make a plan for what happens if a parent is snatched, what happens if, who will they call, who will be the backup adult, so these kids aren't stranded, with no adult to turn to or nobody to care for them. So they all need to have a plan now. They need to think about what sorts of documents that the family members ought to be carrying around with them. And they need to know what their rights are and who they can go to for legal support and protection if something like this happens. So I think there's some ways in which they can make young people in schools feel like if this worst case scenario were to happen to your family, we've got your back, we're going to help you, we're going to be there for you.
The Globe story by Marcela Rodriguez talks about how children many times were unaware that their parents were even undocumented. So they're going to school this year with a whole new understanding of their family's eligibility to be here under this administration, and that they talked to a young woman, 14-year-old girl in New Bedford, who couldn't go to sleep at night. She's worried constantly. So you think to yourself, how are kids going to be able to concentrate on their schoolwork when they're worried about the family being left alone without their parents in the United States, or being left alone without their siblings, or going home to an empty house? It's really
all the research and education tells us, that one of the greatest inhibitors for learning is toxic stress, is an overload of stress in people's lives. Yeah. And things like family instability, the loss of a job, the loss of a parent, that having to move frequently, factors like this, that what we generally call adverse childhood experiences, play a huge role. And this whole ICE intervention is definitely an adverse childhood experience for any of the families involved, and even those who aren't directly hit by it but are threatened by it. And so even if you can get children into school, if this is playing out in the background, as you point out, it's impossible for kids to concentrate and learn.
We're talking to Paul Reville, former education secretary in the Commonwealth here. So PBS.org, that's us, did a big story about U.S. high school students continuing to lose ground in math and reading, but they're talking about this as being a trend that started 20 years ago, before COVID, before people had kids have cell phones to the degree they have now, and they blame a certain dumbing down of the way we teach kids now. He's citing an example where kids used to have to read about 20 books a year. Now they're doing short texts and books excerpts because the teachers think they can't read that many books. It was really kind of a damning look at the way schools in general are operating.
Well, I mean, we've just had the NAEP scores, the National Report Card scores come out, and the reading scores are the worst in 3 decades.
Yeah.
The math
30
scores,
years then.
Yeah, and the math scores are the worst in about 2 decades. It's really alarming what's happening. I don't know that we can pin it all on schools. I mean, some of it is just the nature of the culture, and certainly the availability of technology. I mean, if you look at AI alone these days, and you hear reports, talking from students to students and teachers that, frequently students, even if assigned books, aren't necessarily reading the books because you can get a summary in a matter of seconds. It used to be in the old days, people would have, hidden copies of Cliff Notes around.
Mine weren't hidden, but go ahead.
Yeah. And now you can get Cliff Notes in a matter of 5 seconds, on your phone. And, this is getting in the way of people doing the sort of basic work of reading and thinking and analyzing and empathizing with characters and talking about literature and things of this nature. So the culture has changed. Teachers are trying to keep pace with this. When they make assignments and students aren't reading them, or they're reading, obviously, summarized versions of the text that they're assigning, and then students, having to change the nature of writing now because AI will, all you have to do is give AI 2 or 3 prompts and they'll write a whole essay for you that you can submit. So, I mean, this has been highly disruptive. And yes, there are controversies going on, about how we teach reading and the war between whole language versus phonics. And, phonics is winning that war now. We have a number of states that are moving in the direction of requiring, and Massachusetts is trying to do that as well. And I think that makes some sense to move in the direction of insisting on phonics being a central aspect of teaching reading. But as usual, we get into these bipolar debates. Either it's all phonics or all whole language, when really the truth is the way in which we should teach reading is somewhere in the middle. So I think schools are baffled really about what to do with the change in culture that is affecting what they can accomplish with young people.
What is the solution to a kid reading an abbreviated AI version of Moby Dick rather than all 800 pages? What is the solution?
You can't outlaw it by matter of policy. It's there. So I think it forces schools to rethink how they are going to interact with students over that text, regardless of whether you read the whole thing or you're going to read a summarized version of it. Now, when we get you in class, we're going to ask you to think about it. We're going to ask you to talk about it. We're going to ask you to write about it. And we're going to insist on high standards of performance there. That's what I mean. It's sort of a shakeup, and a lot of this has happened so quickly that educators and education institutions haven't been quite sure how to deal with it, or how do you pivot? How do you? It's kind of like jujitsu. How do you take the energy that's coming from this whole movement and flip it in a way that improves education and improves learning among young people? But the terms of play have changed completely.
When you mention high standards, what just reminded me is we had Patrick Tutwiler in last week, and we forgot to ask him, and this is going to make you both happy. You two were on the losing side of the ballot question that eliminated MCAS's graduation requirement, and we had many discussions amongst the three of us. Amongst the three of us? Was that right?
Amongst the three of us.
Thank you, the three of us, about what they would replace it with should it be repealed. It's a long time now. Is anything happening in terms of...
the governor has impaneled a commission that is due to bring a report, I believe, by December of this year. Who knows what will come of it. It's a very large commission with virtually every interest group in the field on the commission. So I'm not particularly optimistic about what's going to come out in terms of the results of that commission. But I know there's hard thinking going on in the Department of Education, in the Secretary's office. I've met with a new commissioner. He's very concerned about this. It's a top priority. So I'm hoping we're going to see some action in the course of the next year. It's one of the reasons it's slow is there's no easy answer for this, Jim and Marjorie. I mean, there's no, we have 351 cities and towns and many more school districts, and we have different standards. If left to their own devices, these systems will have different standards for what constitutes achievement and different standards and content in courses that they'll offer. We need a common yardstick so we can measure who's making progress and who isn't and do something about it when we have people falling behind.
On that we agree.
And
so let them get to work. What?
And find a common yardstick is hard to do.
Agreed.
If you're not going to give the same test to everybody.
Paul, good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Paul.
Good to be with you.
Take care.
We've been speaking with former Mass Education Secretary Paul Reville, former Secretary of Education from Massachusetts, and a professor at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education, where he also teaches the Redesign Lab. Coming up after a quick break, national security expert Juliette Kayyem joins us on security issues surrounding the killing of Charlie Kirk and what is the latest on the investigation to find the individual who killed him. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In recent years, U.S. counterterrorism resources were shifting to prevention. But since President Trump took office, those efforts have been dismantled.
For a lot of folks in the counterterrorism field, this is a real crossroads moment of what is our strategy and where are we going?
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. We hear how counterterrorism has changed since 9/11 on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Central Square Theater with Silent Sky, the story of how Henrietta Leavitt, a human computer at Harvard in the early 1900s, changed astronomy. Silent Sky runs through October 5th. CentralSquareTheater.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, live music Friday, among the things we'll be doing. We will not be at the library at Tuesday because, as you know, I hope by now, Monday and Tuesday we'll be in Springfield at any PM. Governor Patrick joins us, Attorney General Campbell joins us, Congressman McGovern joins us, and a whole host of people who are doing some fabulous things, mostly in Western Massachusetts. We're joined now on Zoom by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Juliette, thanks for your time.
Of course. Good to be here.
Yeah. So, Juliette, what do we know at 1:15 today on the on the search for the killer in the Charlie Kirk assassination?
So what we know from the FBI most recently is that the rifle has been found. That's going to give all sorts of clues, and they have released an image of the person. What that says to me, just based on my experience, is that they cannot match a face to an individual. Maybe the person didn't have a record, and they have to crowdsource to determine, is this person John Smith or whoever, which doesn't tell us much except a very successful political assassin who planned a very targeted attack and killed his target, Charlie Kirk, with one bullet, was unknown or unidentifiable to law enforcement, at least at this stage. So that is what we know right now, and as this unfolds.
Head of the FBI yesterday tweeted the following. The subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Thank you to the local and state authorities in Utah for your partnership with the FBI. Then 90 minutes later, the same guy, Kash Patel, tweeted the following. The subject in custody has been released After an interrogation by law enforcement, our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in interest of transparency. A rather embarrassing episode for the relatively new.
Yeah, there were two embarrassing episodes. Look, I read some things that the White House is very unhappy with Kash Patel's performance yesterday. I was like, I don't know what you expected. Like, you put someone unqualified. So I don't have much sympathy. So there's a reason why you don't do investigations by tweets. First of all, he's hearing things that are not verifiable on the ground. And so he's tweeting that out. In Utah, they've got, first of all, the first guy they got was a well-known local crank. We have them in Boston. Anyone would have known that this crank was not able to pull this kind of thing. The second person of interest, who then is also released, and Patel has to take that back, was an Arab American. So they're looking for a type, and we can talk about what are the theories of the attack. Who was, however, conservative and a member of TPUSA. He eventually gets released, and the FBI has to retract that. So FBI needs to focus. You cannot have this person successful. I mean, you got to find him and expose his motivation, whether he's part of any group, and also not let him gain notoriety and oxygen because he's able to evade police.
Juliette Kayyem, you said we could discuss the theories of the attack.
Yeah.
What are the theories of the attack?
So we all want this to fit into some certain box. And so I want to start with political assassinations, as we saw with Trump. But look, we saw this with Reagan. Like, they're complicated, they're weird, they're not binary. You know, he's pro-Kirk, he's anti-Kirk, he's pro, Pelosi, anti-Pelosi. And we've seen this in a lot of these more recent assassinations. The Trump assassin was complicated and not clearly in any camp, although he had been a supporter of Donald Trump. So I'm not convinced we're going to find a single reason, but I could be wrong in that. We also know from the FBI that there was some political stuff on the rifle. That might be a red herring. So I would be a little bit careful if he knew that the FBI would get it and he had some philosophy he might put on the rifle.
Like what?
Like he might say, I hate Trump on the rifle. But that's like good, right, in terms of some narrative. But we don't, I mean, that's just him saying that. And he may want, attacks or investigations on progressives or progressive groups, as Donald Trump promised. I do want to say something that is now starting to be said out loud, and I was saying it yesterday, is Charlie Kirk is a complicated person. I didn't agree with him at all, but he also had detractors on the right. For those of us who follow this issue, people like Fuentes and others, were very anti-Charlie Kirk.
Nick Fuentes, a noted anti-Semite, white supremacist, etc. I'm sorry, who has turned on Trump, by the way, because Trump is not radical or Trump enough. But go ahead.
He said something very appropriate, by the way, yesterday. Fuentes did about the killing. He didn't go into anything.
Because he knows. And I mean, everyone. Look, you unleash this thing, and it is appropriate to say something. So I want to just say that those of you who don't know Charlie Kirk, I mean, or maybe you know him as a caricature, one of his appeals, and one of the reasons why progressives often want to mirror him in his style, was his accessibility, which then made him vulnerable to this kind of violence. His willingness to debate, even though he could be, cocky and arrogant and all that stuff. He wasn't alone in his podcast room like Rush Limbaugh had been for so many years. He really did want to engage in the arena, and he was not always with the program. I mean, people now know that he was very much pushing the Epstein disclosures. He's been on the wrong side at various moments, on the wrong side with the White House on what's happening in Gaza, and so we will see how this unfolds. But honestly, I mean, like in some ways, yes, it's going to fit people's narratives one way or the other. But this is about all of us at this stage, and there's a reason why we don't make fun of state senators in Minnesota who were killed as some senators did. It is this thing is unleashed, this political violence and assassination. We've known that for a while. This is a very high profile and unexpected target in many ways, not a politician, but this is not sustainable for our nation. I have to say that.
Well,
at this
I wonder
stage.
if outdoor rallies are going to be at all sustainable, because as we know, Trump was shot at from a rooftop in Butler, Pennsylvania, and it appears if this is indeed the person that was on the rooftop, they think he was on the rooftop and shot at Kirk. So obviously you can't screen for that the way you can indoors, where you could have people go through a metal detector and all that kind of stuff. Is this the end of outdoor rallies, do you think?
I mean, it could be. Look, I think institutions, colleges, universities, museums, libraries, whatever, are going to have to think about security for people that are well-known targets, which Kirk knew he was. Right. He had his private security. But, look, this was not a shooting from the crowd. This was someone who he wanted to get Charlie Kirk. If he didn't get him there, he would have probably gotten him elsewhere. He planned it. He monitored the roof. He was able to get up and down. He apparently had a screwdriver so that he could put the gun back together so that he could carry it up there. And he had an exit for almost 24 hours, and we still don't know who he is. So I think that is. I wouldn't say outdoor rallies generally. It's going to make people more conscious and more worried about their exposure, and ask the right questions about what kind of safety and security is available.
How much information can law enforcement get from the rifle?
Oh, well, they'll have a serial number. They'll be able to at least identify it, and then who the lawful owner is, if there's still a lawful owner, and then be able to trace it. And so that seems to have come up short in some ways, or maybe. But the fact that they are at the crowdsourcing stage, which even 6 hours ago I thought they wouldn't have to get to. I thought they know clearly who this is.
What's the crowdsourcing stage?
Sorry, showing the pictures to the public.
Oh, okay.
You go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was all I had. Yeah.
Okay. Marjorie asked you about outdoor rallies. There's much more to this. Nancy Pelosi's husband was in his house.
Right.
Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, was in his house. Brett Kavanaugh, a Supreme Court justice, was in his house. Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota state rep, was in her house. So what is this? I don't know if it's this event or the last one or the next one of political violence. What's secure? I mean, you're in the security business, and you consult with a lot of entities that worry about their safety. Not to mention the fact that the hospital leader was killed on walking down the street into a hotel. So, what kind of what would you recommend if a member of Congress called you in 10 minutes, who particularly if he or she was a controversial one? What would you say they should do in terms of when they're at work, when they're going from work to a restaurant or home, when they're in their house at home, when they're not at home, but their kids and their partner are? What do they need?
I mean, look, the city councilor, like, let's do someone, obviously some people have more security. Don't make yourself don't make it easy. I don't want people to change their behavior, but, in terms of if you say where you're going on social media, the personal stuff, don't put your kids, all that stuff, try to scrub your residency from being online. All of that is just helpful. It's not going to stop someone. They can always, figure something out. In terms of public events, ask a lot of questions. So some people will have private security. You can also ask about, whether there's metal detectors, whether there's identification, and then just always be aware. Like, I mean, look, you're not going to be able to find a sniper if that's the target, if that's how someone decides, but be aware of what's going on around you. And then also don't be casual about potential threats or other things that you get. Like all of us, I'm sure, just get a lot of cranks, but every once in a while, one of those cranks makes me a little bit nervous, and I tell the appropriate authorities, either at my institution or outside in my community, that I'm a little bit nervous, or just who is this guy or whatever. It's a horrible way to live, but it is the counter is is what? I mean, it's literally that we're not, none of us are in the arena. It means you all get off air. It means, so that's basically, unfortunately, the best advice I can give. Still live, but also be aware this is a possibility now.
We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
So, Juliette, from what I've heard and read, there's a concern that the longer after the crime, the harder it is to find the person. But it does seem, with the rifle and with these pictures, that it's like it took them a while to find the killer of Luigi, the killer.
Yeah.
So this could be, they're going to find him, I would think.
I think so. I think I'm surprised. And that then goes to some theory of who it is. This is someone who did a good shot.
Yeah.
It's someone who did recon. It's someone who had an exit strategy. And so I wonder if it's someone who knows how to evade police and law enforcement and investigation. This person clearly had an exit strategy. It's not like they're like, oh, I'm just going to walk away. They may have a cabin or a home ready to hide, or a group ready to do that. So, but they have to, as I said, stop tweeting, Patel, and find this guy, because as we're seeing, political violence begets political violence. You don't want him to become like we saw with Luigi's killer, with the healthcare CEO killer. You don't want to see oxygen given to this kind of behavior. And then people start saying things like, well, you shouldn't assassinate, but literally people, there's no but. This is pure calculated political assassination, and you don't have to caveat it. Or both sides it.
Juliette, thanks for taking time out. We know you have a really busy day. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Juliette.
Okay. Bye. See you later.
We've been speaking with National Security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, a much-needed break from crime and politics and gunshot attacks and a rare Studio 3 music performance. The Rockport Celtic Festival launches tonight. We're going to hear from Lindsay O'Donovan, artistic director Maeve Gilchrist, and accordion player Diarmuid Ó Meachair. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Join GBH at our Brighton studios for Stories from the Stage. You'll hear entertaining, inspirational stories while you enjoy drinks with friends. Join our studio audience at one of our upcoming shows. Tickets and more info at gbh.org/events.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, celebrating 125 years of Symphony Hall. The towering music of Beethoven's Missus Solemnis, Mozart's Jupiter Symphony, and Mahler's Fourth Symphony opens the season. More at bso.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, ahead on Hour 3 of BPR. We'll start the hour with some live music in Studio 3, ahead of the Rockport Celtic Music Festival tomorrow. We'll talk to organizer Maeve Gilchrist, performer, and our friend Lindsay O'Donovan, and we'll hear live music from accordion player extraordinaire Diarmuid Ó Meachair.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Am I the A-Hole Day, where we present you with a personal moral dilemma and you weigh in on who's the bigger jerk. Today's issue involves a couple where the girlfriend can't stop herself from picking up other people's litter and the boyfriend who thinks it's gross and she should just walk on by. Weigh in next in the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The FBI has released 2 images of a person of interest in Charlie Kirk's assassination. They show someone wearing dark clothes, a dark ball cap, and sunglasses as he apparently was walking through a building. His long-sleeve shirt has a white emblem that appears to be a U.S. flag with a bird. The person of interest has been described as a college-age man. Kirk, a prominent conservative influencer and close ally of President Trump, was gunned down yesterday during an outdoor rally at Utah Valley University. The president continues to respond to the assassination of Kirk, saying he would award him the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports Trump made the remarks at a September 11th memorial ceremony at the Pentagon.
Trump opened his remarks with a short remembrance of Kirk and an announcement of the highest civilian honor a president can bestow.
I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd. Very, very big.
Trump also called Kirk a giant and an inspiration to millions. Trump went on in his September 11th remembrance speech to tout his efforts to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
It's now been 24 years since the September 11th terror attacks. Memorial services and remembrance events are happening across the U.S. This morning in Pennsylvania, bell rang out and names were read, marking the moment the hijacked United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into a field in Shanksville. Commemorations were also held at the Pentagon and at Ground Zero in New York City. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is testing the West by sending drones into Polish airspace and using subterfuge to evade responsibility. NPR's Joanne Chang Christopher reports Ukraine says this is not the first time Russia has used deception during military maneuvers.
Zelensky said he believes the Kremlin sent the drones into Polish airspace to rattle NATO member states in Europe. He said Moscow hopes allies will keep their air defense systems and missiles to protect themselves instead of sending some to Ukraine. Zelensky also said he saw eerie similarities between Russia's drone incursion on Polish airspace and its 2014 invasion of Crimea in southern Ukraine. He explains that back in 2014, Moscow sowed confusion in Crimea by secretly deploying Russian soldiers in unmarked green uniforms, while today denying the drones that invaded Polish airspace were Russian-made. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Let's start with some good news. 2 staffers with the Everett Department of Public Works were honored at the State House today for rescuing residents from an apartment fire last summer. Jesse Winokur and Jason Papa received the Madeline Amy Sweeney Award for Civilian Bravery, presented every September 11th. Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll says the men put their lives at risk to save others.
Without protective gear and frankly without hesitation, they went into that building. Using their athleticism, their instincts, and before firefighters arrived, Jason and Jesse had cleared 2 floors, a total of 14 people.
The Madeline Amy Sweeney Award is named for an Acton flight attendant killed on September 11th who relayed information to the ground as hijackers took control of her plane. Boston neighborhoods along the shoreline should prepare for flooding later today. Forecasters say the city will be hit with a king tide peaking late this afternoon. That's when conditions align to make the expected high tide 2 to 4 feet higher than usual. And if the water doesn't get you, maybe the darkness will. Starting today, boo, the sun will set at 7 p.m. or earlier.
Darkness, darkness, be my pillow.
sleep.
Great tune. Youngbloods is the name of that band. Keep in mind that health practitioners say watching the sunset can provide several health and mental benefits, including stress reduction, improved sleep quality, a boost in mood, and an opportunity for reflection. Perfect day for it. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with Live Music Friday. We will not be back there on Tuesday, though, because we are going out to Springfield to broadcast from our NEPM affiliate on Monday and Tuesday. We're going to be joined there by former Governor Deval Patrick, Congressman Jim McGovern, and the Attorney General of Massachusetts, Andrea Cabral. The mayor's going to be with us. That's Michelle Wu, September 23rd at the Boston Public Library. Also coming to the library on the 30th of September is Maura Healey, the governor. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, and by the way, we're done with Charlie Kirk for today. We're going to try to bring a little joy into your life and our lives for the next hour. In 2019, the incomparable late Brian O'Donovan founded the Rockport Celtic Festival. This year's festivities kick off tonight for a weekend of live music, storytelling, cultural exchange, 3 things near to Brian's heart. Many of the performances will be held at the beautiful Shalin Lau Performance Center. For information and tickets, go to rockportmusic.org. We're joined now to talk about the week of festivities by Lindsay O'Donovan. Great to see you, Lindsay. How are you?
Thanks, Jim. You too.
On Zoom, Festival Artistic Director and harpist Maeve Gilchrist. Hi, Maeve. Nice to have you, too.
Hi, folks.
And accordion player Diarmuid. Now, I was going to say Ó Meachair, but then I heard him say, if I wanted to be real, I would say Diarmuid Ó Meachair. Is that Ó Meachair?
Ó Meachair.
Ó Meachair.
Ó Meachair.
Is that called? That was not horrible, was it?
No, it was a very honest effort.
That's not much, my friend. Okay, speaking of honest effort, you're going to do more than that. Before we even talk about the festival and get started, you're going to bring up the whole thing here. You're going to play a little something for us, yes?
Yeah, I'll play some reels for you. I hope you enjoy them.
We're going to love them. Here he is. bring your colleagues into that is a beautiful instrument. That doesn't look like an accordion.
Yeah, smaller, much smaller.
What is that beautiful thing? By the way, I hope you're watching on YouTube because it is really beautiful. What is it?
So this particular accordion, well, it depends on where you are in the world. In Cajun music, they call it a diatonic. In Quebecois music, they call it an accordion, but in Ireland, we call this a melodeon. But really, it's a 10-key, so 10-button, single-row melodeon that has 4 sets of reeds. And this one was made in Quebec, in Montmagny. It's a melody melodeon, so it's fitting that I'll be playing a Quebecois instrument on the same night as the theme is from Quebec to Brittany, and I'm playing Irish music on it. So yeah, it's a single-row melodeon. But in Irish music, we play 2-row accordions and single-row accordions, and there are a lot of stylistic and technical differences between them both. So when I perform, I explore these and I try and talk about them and present them to the audience. You know?
do it beautifully. That was great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So Maeve Gilchrist, you're the artistic director of this whole shebang. So tell us what's going on up in Rockport.
Well, we've got an absolutely stunning weekend ahead, and I was heartbroken that I couldn't hear on Zoom Diarmuid's box playing, but Marjorie, I could see your head bobbing up and down, and everyone had smiles on their face, and that's really what the weekend is about. I mean, when Brian founded this festival, he was very much inspired by a lot of the kind of boutique festivals happening in Ireland and in Scotland, festivals like Kilkenny, like Celtic Connections, festivals that presented high quality traditional Irish and Scottish music, but also used Celtic music as a conversational starter. They invited kind of adjacent folk music styles, indie music style, classical music, and so he kind of separated this from his more traditional Christmas Celtic sojourn and St. Patrick's Celtic Day sojourn as an opportunity to be very imaginative, very inventive. So along with the traditional music, we've got the Quebecois supergroup Le Vent du Nord, we've got a New England-based trio Triton, we've got the author Ben Shattuck, who was NPR. Yes. I heard him on NPR just yesterday.
He was on our show last week. Go ahead.
His writing is just so of the earth. I love it. And we have him collaborating with the fiddle player Liz Knowles, who is our artist in residence. And she's created a brand new work there's a fantastic band, 5 musicians. We've got Mike Block, Liz Knowles, Kyle Sana, Jenna Moynihan, myself, Logan Cole. And she's written a whole new piece inspired by themes from the history of sound and really approaching Irish traditional music as an organism, and there's, you have to come and hear it to really understand it, but there's such a presence of poetry, and she quotes from Ben's books, and Ben will be there reciting quotes from the history of sound as well. We've got the event, which was always Brian's favourite event, Words and Music, which is really a celebration of the time-old relationship between folk music and words. He called it Going to Church, where we invite our musicians to bring words of meaning and just share a moment that's contemplative, that's uplifting. It can be a moment of stillness, and we have these poems and stories and pieces of prose supported by improvised and curated soundtracks. On Saturday night, we're bringing together the classical music world and the folk music world, 2 worlds historically that haven't had a lot to do with one another. But there's really kind of an exciting shift in artistic psyches, particularly in Ireland and Scotland right now. Historically, there was a lot of snobbery on both sides of the musical aisle, and in recent years, there's been a lot of light shone on the nuance and sophistication that we, of course, know is part of traditional music, but wasn't always thought that way. So on Saturday night, we've got the Grammy Award-winning Baroque violinist Christina de Matheson, coming with Michael Leopold on theremin. They're going to play Bieber's Mystery Sonatas. And then next to that, we've got Open the Door for 3, a fantastic Irish traditional music trio. And they'll be playing music that was being played in Ireland at the time Bieber was writing in Europe. At the time that Telemann and Bach were writing, we had harp players like Turlough O'Carolan composing and performing in Ireland. So they'll be playing that repertoire. And again, just kind of illuminating these cultural intersections that we might not be aware of. So it's a thrilling weekend.
Maeve did not breathe once during that description of this festival. That was amazing. Lindsay, were you worried when Brian died that he wouldn't live on in the multitude of ways he has?
No, I wasn't actually, because Brian had always had a lot of great people working with him, including Maeve, and particularly with this festival, Maeve was his co-director, not his assistant director. So it was a really easy segue for Maeve to just, in fact, the final summer of Brian's life, he wasn't able to be up there even at all. And Maeve basically did everything. And the year before, when he was sick, she really kind of just, on very short notice, mind you, pulled the whole thing together and made it in a way that Brian was able to participate fully.
You know what I want to tell you? I don't know if you get to hear this, but and Marjorie will verify this. When we have live music on the radio, mostly on Fridays, I don't care the age of the musician. They can be 27. How old are you?
28.
28, close enough. 28 or 100 or 88 or whatever. Every one of them, when we ask about Brian O'Donovan, do they know him? Did they know of him? Did he have an influence? There is never anybody who says, I met him once, he encouraged me. I mean, it's just so beautiful. It's really incredible, and I hope you know that to be the case.
Well, thank you, Jim.
It's really stunning.
He just really loved all sorts of music, so I think that this festival was really a lot of fun for him because he could kind of go everywhere with it. As long as he had that one little thread tying it back to Celtic, he could kind of, as Maeve said, just embellish on everything. And so it's kind of an exciting one for us.
You know, Maeve, when you describe this exciting festival, do you think it has different meaning and importance to people when the world's such a mess like it is, and they're seeking a respite, an outlet, some joy? Do you think they take it in differently?
I think there are very few opportunities where people from different political, cultural backgrounds can get together and be transported. And I mean, it's a cliche to say, but it's just true that music has such emotional impact. It has the power to transport and bring people to a similar place of feeling. And I think any opportunity to make that happen these days is incredibly important.
You know, Diarmuid, I should say, we love Holy Cross. You have to get closer to the mic. We blame it for Clarence Thomas. So the good news is that how you went? You've only been here a couple of years, right?
2 years.
And
now,
was it a Holy Cross connection that ended up getting here?
No, so I'd actually gotten my artist visa approved, and then within a month's time, there was a job advertised that Holy Cross were looking for an Irish button accordion teacher.
Is that really true?
I'm telling you. I was teaching at a very prestigious festival in Ireland called the Scoil Saurig Willie Clancy, the Willie Clancy Summer School, and I did my interview on Zoom during that week.
That's great.
That was beginning of July, and I was over here within 2 or 3 months. So yeah, and I mean, the great thing about Holy Cross is that the Irish community there is growing. You know, this year I have 2 full classes of introduction to Irish music modules. So it's growing, and I actually have a residency with Liz Knowles in October, who's performing here this weekend, and that's it's celebrating a connection between the New England Conservatory and Holy Cross, and it's all happening at the same time, and it's a bit bizarre, to be honest, to be in the middle of it all, but I'm trying to enjoy it.
You know, so for people who haven't been up there, and I've managed to get up there the last 2 years, and it was really something, although I have a minor complaint I'm going to tell you about in a second. But tell people why Shaolin Liu is so great for this, what a great center it is, Maeve.
The Shaolin Liu is a stunning building. It's the back wall of the stage is glass, and it looks out onto the Atlantic Ocean. So, you know, I mean, ironically, 2 of our evening concerts, we actually have to close the curtains because of the amplification.
That was my complaint. Yes. I kept looking for this great view. I kept saying, when are they going to open the window? When are they going to open the window? I think you should open the window. The hell with the acoustics.
I totally get it. And we, you know, right now the rehearsals are going on upstairs, and just having that backdrop of the ocean it's priceless. And on Sunday now, we do all day. And for the matinee concert that day, we can actually watch the sunset. And I personally keep hoping for a shark attack or something to happen, you know, in perfect synchronicity with the dramatic moment of the music.
But is it the acoustics? Is that the issue? Why the window is blocked up? Yeah.
It is. So originally it was created for chamber music, so there was very little amplification needed. But you know, in these kind of shows where we've got a number of different acts coming and going, we inevitably need amplification, and there's bounce back from the glass. So yeah. However, one can just take a step outside and they'll breathe in the salt air and see the ocean.
Talking to you, Marjorie, instead of whining.
You're right on top of the ocean, which is so cool. And then there's all these restaurants nearby where you can get, a bite to eat beforehand. And then they have an intermission where you can get some more, a couple of sodas or wine or whatever you want.
Lindsay,
nice.
Off what Diarmuid said a couple of minutes ago, the Celtic music audience, it seems to me, continues to grow. Like every direction you go, there's more and more. Is that fair?
Yes, it is. And Maeve and I were just talking about this the other day, how it's wonderful. We are always delighted to see folks that have been say to us in the intermission, we come every year to this, we come every year, and we would never miss anything. But at the same time, we are also just really excited to have somebody that's new. And when I'm hosting the shows at the Borough, and I always am really happy when someone says, I always ask, is there anyone who's never been to one of the Legacy concerts? And when someone raises their hand, I almost want to give them a hug and say, thank you for taking a chance. Thank you for coming. And I think that we just really always want to get people in.
Maeve, tell people about the harp. I mean, I think you've got 5 recordings now already and a new one that just came out. What's the name of the new one?
Gosh, I don't think there. I don't know if there's a new one, Marjorie.
Oh, I thought there was.
Well, you would know if there was. Yeah,
I thought I'd read about it.
There certainly are some new ones coming at the end of this year. But I'd love to talk about the harp.
Yeah, why the harp? Why the harp? It's such a beautiful instrument, but it's why did you choose it?
Well, not for the weight, I'll tell you that. But so we joke that it's a family affliction on my mother's side. I grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland, but my mother is from Tipperary, Ireland, and 2 of her sisters are professional harpists, and I've got cousins who are harp players, and it was on my radar in part because of the family connection, but also just the music scene that I grew up in Scotland was traditional music, and it's a dominant instrument in Scottish traditional music, and it's also much more accessible. You could rent them, or the schools would have them, and so it was there, and I loved it actually. And I have a twin sister, and I remember when we were about 7 or 8, my mother said, right, Maeve seems musical, so we'll give her the fiddle so it doesn't sound awful in the house, and we'll give Orna, my twin sister, the harp, because no matter what you play, it sounds nice.
That's true. Yes. You could just sit there and have no idea what you're doing.
Immediately I rebelled and said, the harp's mine. So
that's a great story. Well, speaking of instruments, is this picking up popularity? I have to say, I didn't grow up loving the accordion, I should say. I have become a convert even before you walked into the studio. Is this gaining in popularity?
Well, the accordion is a very dangerous instrument in the wrong hands, and I'm trying to save as many of them as I can. But it is, especially so traditionally speaking, I suppose the music that I'm very interested in is from the 1920s, and back then they only had single row accordions. But then as I suppose they started adding buttons to it, and then in the 1940s, 50s and 60s, the 2-row button accordion completely took over in Ireland. And this kind of instrument was just, they saw it as a limited instrument because I don't have any semitones, I just have the straight scale. But in the last...
And you're fighting back? Is that what it is? Are you a purist of sorts if you're
I don't label myself as anything, but the music that I play on this instrument, I'm channeling the energy from those records in the 1920s, and I feel like it's much easier for me to do that on this instrument because I have 4 sets of reeds. I have a piccolo reed, a bassoon reed, and 2 middle reeds, so that's every time I'm playing one note, you're hearing 4. It's a very bright sound, and because I'm limited with notes, I kind of try and find out how much I can get out of it,
Okay, well, you're 28 years old, so you didn't grow up around here either, but those of us who did can remember, maybe you do, Lindsay, community auditions, which was a show every Sunday, and they have these 7-year-olds with this accordion that went from their knees to their necks, and they could barely pick the thing up, and they're playing, and it's off-key, and it's horrible. This is a totally different experience. We shouldn't even call it an accordion. Remember that show?
Oh, God, I loved
Star of the Day, who will it be?
Maeve, back to you, and Lindsay would know that actually all 3 of you would. When we've been lucky enough to interview some of the players and some of the things that Brian has done through the years, one of the things almost all of them say is they love the opportunity to mix and play with other musicians in sort of odd kinds of groupings, which I really loved at so many of the things that Brian did. Is there some of that going on? I know you invite musicians up at some point Saturday, whenever whatever it is. Is there some of that during the festival?
Yeah, there is. And actually, I think it's something that Brian really started that we're trying to maintain and that sets the festival apart. So we do have different bands, different soloists coming and doing their thing. But in almost every concert, there's collaborations, new collaborations happening. Of course, on Sunday, we've got a brand new commission. But for example, on Saturday, we were trying to think of a way that we could bring the traditional Irish musicians together with the Baroque musicians. And we also, that same evening, have two musicians who are playing on Baroque instruments, but they play Quebec repertoire, Alexis Chartrand from Montreal and Nicolas Babineau. And so the vehicle that we found that was suggested to us by Liz Knowles, our artist in residence, was a piece by William Byrd from the 1600s called Irish March, a piece that was during the folk revival made popular by the band Planxty, the Irish band Planxty. And it's this wonderful churning theme. And we found ways to get the Irish pipes on, the Baroque violin, the theorbo. So yeah, we've got loads of kind of coming together. On this Sunday, we've got David Coffin, the wonderful shanty singer.
Oh, he sang in our studio a couple of years ago. He's fabulous. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, he is. He's absolutely fabulous. And a few years ago, we started our free community event, which is a publess pub sing, because of course Rockport historically is a dry town. So we started these free community sings, and now we've had to move to bigger venues every year because they get sold out. So we'll have loads of voices joining him. He typically sings solo, but on Sunday we've got a nickel harpa player joining him. We've got Kyle Sana on guitar. So yeah, every concert there's some kind of unique collaboration for that event.
That's beautiful. That's great.
Okay, so how do people find out about this, get their tickets? What do they do, Maeve?
Rockportmusic.org. Or if you just Google Rockport Celtic Festival, it'll come right up. Tickets are selling very fast. We've almost sold out 2 of the events. So get your tickets now. It's a weekend full of warmth. And when I think of the many, many gifts that Brian left us, I think perhaps the biggest was the warmth that he generated from performers on the stage down to the audience. And I'm hoping we can harness that magic and keep it going.
I wish you could see this smile on Lindsay's face as you're describing the thing. So how about this? Why don't you say what's coming up? And then Diarmuid will be kind enough, I think, to play us out with one more thing. Will you do it for us?
Yeah, can everybody hear me when I'm playing? Yeah,
the only person who can't hear
Maeve.
you is Maeve on Zoom.
Sorry, Maeve.
Just watch Marjorie's reaction, Maeve. You'll get the feel. Maybe you will be able to. So why don't you say what's coming up, and then we'll Diarmuid will tell us what he's playing.
We've been speaking, of course, with Lindsay O'Donovan, Festival Artistic Director, and harpist Maeve Gilchrist, accordion player Diarmuid Ó Meachair. Oops.
Well done.
Okay. He's a nice guy.
He is a nice guy.
Ahead of tonight's launch of the Rockport Celtic Music Festival. For information and tickets, again, go to rockportmusic.org. It's gorgeous up there. It's a wonderful weekend, and it's very soothing and inspiring. Anyway, thank you very much.
What's coming up quickly?
Coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines. This is always embarrassing transition, Lindsay.
Go ahead.
To Am I the A-hole segment. This week involves a young couple split on whether they should be picking up other people's trash on their daily walks. Who's the bigger jerk, the person who picks up everything, or the guy who wants to just keep walking past the trash? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR and 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Diarmuid, what are you going to play?
I'm going to play 2 versions of a reel called The Morning Dew that was recorded by a great Sligo fiddle player, Michael Coleman, in New York in the 1920s. So I hope you enjoy.
We will. Thanks. Great. We'll
be right back.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, we'll remember local victims of the 9/11 terror attacks. In the last couple of years, the counterterrorism field has shifted its strategy to prevention. But in President Trump's second term, those efforts have been dismantled. And a huge high tide is expected to cause coastal flooding in Boston this afternoon. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Speakers Series, continuing its season at Symphony Hall with 7 evenings featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. BostonSpeakers.org. And the MBTA Commuter Rail, helping riders skip the stress of city traffic and parking. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. After another fabulous segue by Marjorie into Am I the A-Hole? Streaming at YouTube, it's hard. I'm glad you're the one doing it, not me. .com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow for Live Music Friday. More music 2 days in a row. 2 broadcasts Monday and Tuesday from any PM. We'll be in Springfield. I think you know this by now, which means you won't be at the library Tuesday. Governor Patrick, Congressman McGovern, Attorney General Campbell, and a whole host of guests from Western Mass that are fascinating, at least to me. I think they will be to you too. Mayor at the library on September 23rd. Governor at the library with us on the 30th. So it's time for our weekly Am I the A-Hole segment, where we scrape the bowels of the internet for petty disputes and bring them to you to judge. Today's prompt comes to us via The Guardian. It involves a young couple who enjoy taking walks together. But the girlfriend also has a habit of picking up trash as they go. If they're walking the dog, she also picks up other dog poop she sees along the way. Now, her boyfriend thinks this is unsanitary and disgusting, has asked her to stop. He also is worried about her mental health and says she can become consumed by worries about the environment and what she can do every day to help protect the planet. So is he really being an a-hole for asking her to stop her community-conscious actions? Or is there some nuance here? And maybe she could be, as he says, protecting the peace a little bit more. What's your take? Who's the a-hole? The trash picker-upper who ruins every walk for the couple, at least the man in the couple, or the head-in-the-sand boyfriend who just wants to ignore our climate crisis and discourage his girlfriend from helping with that crisis? 877-301-8970. Now, I always hesitate to ask Marjorie because she says, well, on one hand, on the other hand, on the one hand.
We're going to ask you first, Jim.
Oh, fine. I'll be happy
Who's
to
the
do
a-hole?
that. She is. I mean, it is. I mean, I know it's well intended, but would you like to take a walk with somebody who's picking up trash nonstop, including dog crap, and it's one thing to pick up your own dogs, which is hard enough.
Picking up the whole neighborhood.
Picking up the whole neighborhood stuff. You know what you do? You give her a phone. You call the sanitation department and tell. And by the way, I admire people. Well, yeah. Well, we both know somebody who did exactly what this girlfriend. Who would that be?
Michael Dukakis.
Governor Dukakis would walk wherever he was walking. It's true, even when he was governor, picking up trash. And I admire that kind of thing. But you can't imagine in a walk with a partner how it's not to disparage her intentions. It's like, give it a rest is my position. Make contributions to the climate crisis in other ways. And trust me, I know Marjorie. Marjorie's going to say, well, go ahead. What's your position?
The thing about this woman is it's not just that she picks up the trash. It's that she always wants to watch these really depressing documentaries about, how fast fashion is ruining the world and the fishing industry is going under. Okay. And the poor guy has to watch these with her. And then she gets really down and depressed and she goes on and on about the state of the world. You're going to come out where I came out? And she's got, but she's got issues. She's got OCD. She's got anxiety. She works in the charity business, which is
complicating this
at the
too
time.
much.
So it makes she can't limit herself. That's the problem.
So what was your point? What's
well, I think that this is a situation where, I'm going to say they should compromise. Either she gives up all the horrible, depressing documentaries, or she quits picking up the trash when she's on a walk with him. She's got to compromise because it's driving him absolutely crazy. We don't know whether she does it with gloves. That's a big issue. Now, apparently, they do have hand sanitizer with them, which is a good thing.
It's nothing like walking with hand sanitizer, you know?
I know. She's obsessed with recycling, and that drives him a little crazy, too. And if, he takes one wrong move, like throws the milk carton in the wrong bin, I mean,
do you pick up trash when you're out?
On the couch.
Do you pick up trash while you're out?
Well, as I told you before, I'm very familiar with this phenomenon because once when I was at the Herald this is in 2018, he used to talk about picking up trash. Of course, the Herald didn't believe him, so they sent me down. That's right. So they sent me down to sit in front of his house until he came out to walk to work, and then when he came out,
and you walked with him.
We were race walking, let me tell you. We were really race walking 2 miles, and he did this every day, as it turns out, picking up trash between Perry Street and Brookline and Northeastern University, where he has a job. He was picking up everything off the ground, throwing it in a bag, and I felt so guilty about it that I began to pick up trash. Too. Well, the guy's like 20 years older than I am, or he's quite a bit older than I am, and he's bending down. So I felt I had to bend.
When you're not with Governor Dukakis, do you pick up trash?
No, I do not.
So then why are you defending her picking up trash?
Because she's obsessed with the state of the environment, Jim. She's a rabid environmentalist, and he says, by the way, that the reason he fell in love with her was because she was so big on this, caring about the world, caring about other people. She thinks that's part of what the attraction was. So he knew what he was getting into.
Okay, can I say, Marjorie has really complicated this.
I have.
Do you want to go walking with a partner who's picking up dog crap along the way from whatever animal decides to deposit it on the sidewalk? I mean, really. Really. And by the way, is it necessary? I don't want to get into it. Well, maybe I do. Is it bad for the environment that dogs? I mean, it's horrible to have them crap on a sidewalk.
Well, it's bad if it's close to any kind of body of water.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, because it will get fecal contamination.
Forget everything Marjorie said about the documentaries and all this sort of stuff. We want to know. I mean, really, it's complicated. We want to know if your partner is walking down the street while you're trying to have a fun walk.
That's the problem.
Picking up trash and dog do
with these things.
Is that okay? And or is it reasonable for him in this case to say, I admire what you're doing. I love the fact that you care about the environment. That this isn't the forum to be doing your stuff.
Listen to this. David Sedaris, he's that hysterically funny essayist and writer.
He's pretty funny.
He does this too, apparently, and his town named a garbage truck after him, says a texter.
Okay, since you told your Dukakis story with trash, I'm going to tell mine.
Okay.
I, of course, was not walking with him, nor was I picking up trash. This is not exaggerated, this story. Many, many years, 20 plus years ago, my kids are in single digits. They're taking art classes at the MFA. I'm waiting in the back of the MFA and to pick them up. And it's time to pick up the kids. And so I should have turned and gone to the exit. But I see this small man in the distance out of my rearview mirror picking up trash along the way. And I mean, with a passion, picking up trash. And I decide I'll stay there for 90 seconds so I can see who it is. I don't mean like I know who it is, but just to get a sense of what kind of person does this. Totally true story. I don't know why, but I couldn't tell who it was. This guy gets to my mirror, looks into my car, sees it's me. Without saying hello, he says, on my honor, let me tell you something. If Barack Obama does not have his volunteers go door to door, he's going to lose this election. Was that two classic Michael Dukakis behaviors, whom we both love, by the way.
I didn't tell you.
Trash picking and getting right to the point.
Well, one more thing. He was a big Green Line taker.
He was.
And when we got to Northeastern, he told me that the Green Line was right over there and I could take the Green Line back to Brigham Circle. But I was too exhausted, and I waited till he was out of sight, and I called a cab.
Did you put that in your column?
I did.
Okay, 877-301-8097.
My feet were killing me, too.
We've really gotten...
Not to mention my back.
Or as Steve Sweeney said yesterday, your dogs are back.
Your dogs are back. That's right.
Okay, let's take some calls. Who's the a-hole here? Michelle in Somerset. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
We're excellent, thank you.
Very good. So, I believe that he did fall in love with her for that reason. But, being married for 39 years on Saturday, they can
happy
compromise.
Anniversary.
You got to compromise. That's right, Michelle.
What's the compromise?
Absolutely.
What's the compromise?
Go for your walks and pick one day, that you can then pick up the trash.
That's brilliant.
You know?
Exactly.
One
you know what
day,
else this
pick
woman
up the
does?
trash.
This woman goes to the beach on the weekends and starts picking up all the trash.
And forces
at the beach
him
on the
to pick
weekend.
up the
Forces
trash
him to
with
go.
him.
Yeah, she should go to the beach by herself and go on her walks by
You know
herself.
what they do? They pick up the seagull crap on the beach.
That's right.
Hey, by the way, Michelle, happy anniversary. Congratulations. Call us
Actually,
again.
I've never really seen seagull crap that much in the
I've
beach.
had them crap on me
Yeah.
at the beach.
Usually it
and it's
disappears
huge.
in the sand.
Well, unless it gets you before it gets to
Yeah.
the sand.
I'm
877.
sorry that's happened to you, Jim.
I'm sorry, too. 877, as long as it doesn't get on my tuna
You know,
sub.
I remember when I was in high school driving to this beach near my house, Horseneck Beach. We're going down Route 88, and the boyfriend of this friend of mine, he's throwing everything out the window. He's throwing his
that
McDonald's
drives me
cups. He's
out.
throwing his thing out the window. And I said, "What are you doing, Tommy?" He said, "I'm giving jobs, making jobs. This is other people's jobs. I'm giving them jobs. Don't get fired."
That, to me, is of the reprehensible behavior. I know it's not the biggest thing
I
in the
was
world.
shocked.
That's up there. Isn't
Yeah.
that horrible?
I know. He's a good guy, though.
He is?
Yeah, it was a bad thing he did.
Oh, it's fine. Okay.
Okay,
Well, this
Todd-
woman's going to pick it up, so that's okay. Todd and...
A texter wants to know more about the bird pooping
It's not
on
Texter,
you.
it's Nicole, our coworker.
It's Nicole, our coworker.
Todd, I've told you all I'm going to tell you, Nicole.
Okay.
Todd in Florida, hi.
Hey, yeah, normally Attleboro, number one. Thanks
Oh,
for
good.
being a bright spot in my day.
Thank
You're a
you.
sweetheart.
Number two, I feel bad calling her the a-hole.
Yeah.
But
Why?
I can sympathize with her. My sister picks up dog poop. She loves it. I don't know why.
God.
So you know, I really think, you know, I like the last caller. She said maybe she can do it one day. Maybe she can join a group. That's just the poop. If it's trash and I see too much of it, I use this app called C-Click Fix. It goes straight to Attleboro, and they pick it up, and they report on it. Love the app.
Wait, give
Really?
us that again. How does that work?
You download the app. It's called C-Click Fix. And then you put a picture, it puts a location and everything, reports it to the city, and then they pick it up and close the ticket. I love it. I use it all the time.
That is spectacular.
God.
Good for Attleboro.
I think in most places, if you did that, you might be waiting for days.
Todd, thank you. That was an excellent call. Enjoy Florida. Come home soon. Thank you very much for the call. Now, every time our team says they have sound of something odd, you know we're playing with trouble here. Now, I mentioned that I've been pooped on, if you'll excuse the well, I mean, it is what it is. I'm trying to be transparent. By a seagull on the beach.
Yeah.
I don't remember what beach. They say they have the sound of the offending seagull. We'll give it a try. Here it is. that actually was worth the...
I was at the beach this summer, and I was near where the snack bar was, and they had a trash bin with a little triangle
What
on the top
beach?
for people to Craigville Beach.
Okay.
And they have a triangle on the top to so that people can put their trash in there. And these seagulls, they are unbelievable, man. They go right down through the triangle into the trash bin, and it's incredible. They'll come out with like a whole chicken breast, and they'll fly away. You know, they get half of a sub sandwich.
great.
I mean, and on the beach, they're so aggressive. You'll be sitting there, and you're having, maybe you brought some peanuts or something to eat, or maybe you're eating your sandwich down there, and they're just standing there, bold as brass, like 3 feet away, waiting to come in for the attack, and they will come in for the attack.
Okay, so the question is, who's the a-hole in this walking couple? The woman who picks up not just trash nonstop as they're walking, but a dog poop that was left unattended by other dog owners, or the man who says, you shouldn't do this, even though I admire the fact that you have deep environmental concerns. Julie in a car, hi.
Hi, this is Julie. I am so excited. I never get to call, and this is the first time I've ever called.
We're thrilled
Julie,
to have you. Thanks for
calling.
doing it. Hi. That's great.
So I think that he is the a-hole.
Ooh.
Are the people who are throwing their trash. I have the same affliction that she has, and I want to pick up every piece of garbage that I see. I also wonder if she's actually picking up raw dog poop, or if she's picking up that people bag up their dog poop and then throw that on the ground.
Yeah, that
which
drives.
I don't understand. I see it all the time.
I've seen that too.
It drives me insane.
Yeah, I'm hoping it dropped out of their pocket or something. I mean, what do you think the
Wait,
story
people
is
put
there?
dog poop in their pockets?
No. They have the plastic bag.
Oh, the bag.
Yeah, or those green things that you're supposed to get, the environmentally correct dog poop bag.
I don't know, Marjorie. I mean, that's a lot of dropping out of your pocket.
Yeah,
I
no,
see
that's a
every
good point.
Single time I
Yeah,
drop.
that's
Julie,
pretty bad.
as somebody who you admit has the same same affliction. One of the things we were talking, well, two things we were talking about this morning. In between depositories, what do you do with the trash that you've picked up? Just hold it in your hand?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I'll have a bag with me. If I'm with my dog, I'll have a doggy bag.
But if not?
I can pick up the trash and put it in it. If not, I mean, it happened the other day. I was out walking with my friend, and I saw one of those, 6-pack plastic can, and I just put it in my pocket, and I walk with it until I get home.
Oh, you got to pick up
and
those.
Then I cut it up.
Yeah, you got to cut it up. You're right.
Because
They'll strangle.
Okay.
They'll strangle them.
And
They
my
won't be able to
second
eat.
question
No,
is
not
that-
strangle. They won't be able to open their mouth and eat.
My second question, which is really Marjorie's from this morning, do you wear gloves when you're
Yes,
out
you wear
picking
gloves.
up garbage?
I do not. And I
you go.
don't have hand sanitizer either.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Hey, more exposure.
Hey,
More exposure.
Hey, Julie, that was a great first call. We really appreciate it. Call us again, please. Thank you. That was Julie in a car who has the same affliction,
Well,
as she said.
the boyfriend thinks that she needs to let up on some of these things to protect her own peace, is the way he put it, because she gets herself all worked up into a frenzy about, the garbage, the environment.
We should be worked into a frenzy about it. We are. But there's
fashion.
certain behaviors that you should engage in, and there's certain behaviors that are too much, at least for other people,
Yeah.
How do you feel about Julie here picking up trash? It's one thing to pick up the 6-pack plastic rings kind of thing. How do you feel about her picking up, if she doesn't have a bag with her, she's doing it with her bare hands and puts it in her pocket until she gets to the next garbage can. How do you feel about that? Good?
I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah. Well, you don't do anything with it. So what are you talking about? You take a cab home after Dukakis told you to ride the green line. Total fraud.
Well, he was race walking. I was exhausted. I was sweating profusely. I mean, it was unbelievable. That guy, for an older guy, man, he was in great shape.
You know where Isaac's from?
Oh, hi, Isaac from Fall River. Hi.
Hi, Isaac.
Oh, my gosh. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, my gosh, to you too. Hi.
This is also my first time calling, and thank you so much for just doing this podcast, and I love it.
Oh, thank you so much for calling.
Isaac. What's up?
No, I just wanted to add in that I don't think anybody's at fault truly here.
That's right.
Yeah, I feel like everybody is very different, but I also feel like there should be no compromise, but more so of a collaboration. I feel like if the woman is going and going on a walk and he already knows what type of time she's on, he should already have a bag in hand.
Oh,
by the way, that is brilliant,
a nice
actually,
guy?
Isaac. I like that.
No.
So do you have a partner who picks up crap along the way, or are you a picker-upper? What?
Luckily, Jim, I'm blessed with a fiance who sees trash and is like, oh no, but we need to do better. But that's just my standing on it, truly.
Well, she's lucky to have you, Isaac. Call us again. We're thrilled with your first call, too. Nice to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Jeff in Needham has kind of a 2-in-1 kind of deal. He says, while I'm walking my dog, if I find small trash items, I will pick them up and add them to the poop bag.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, so that and then he'll throw the whole thing out when he gets back to the or whatever he does when he gets back to his house.
What do you think about people, as someone who had wonderful dogs throughout your life?
Yeah.
How do you feel about people who leave poop behind?
Pretty bad.
And you know what's even worse?
Pretty bad.
Occasionally I spy someone who is
Sneaking
looking
off.
around
That's right.
to make sure that no one is seeing
That's
them,
correct.
meaning they know they're doing something wrong, but they decide to do it anyway.
Very bad, Jim.
Very, very bad. Let me tell you, I have also, have you ever seen anybody
outrageous.
driving on the road like that Tommy guy throwing the dog poop out the window of the car? You ever seen that?
No.
I made that up. I wanted to make sure you were paying attention, which you usually don't.
Not
when I'm
dog poop out
talking.
the window, but he did through stuff like from
Like a what?
McDonald's.
Like a
I thought that
cup?
was- like we went, we stopped.
What is that, to prove you're a tough guy? What
This
is
is a
that?
million years ago, but before we, environmentally correct, I guess. But I couldn't believe he was throwing things out the window because we already had that commercial of the guy that was pretending to be a
crying
Native American. He wasn't a Native American.
I know,
They got a fake Native American with a tear coming down his face and looking at what we'd all done to the beauty of America. So that was already on TV. I was surprised he did it.
There's a colleague of ours who wrote a related side issue, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective. How do you feel about throwing apple cores and banana peels out the window?
Oh, well, I have read where if you, they will be eaten. They will be picked up and eaten by
a rat.
birds. Well, rats have to eat.
So what's your position on that? thought about
I
it
haven't
yet.
really come to the have
Could
to
you
make
tell
that.
us tomorrow if you thought about it for a
I haven't
while?
made a big decision about eating an apple or banana in the car, but I don't think that's bad. Or maybe somebody can correct me, because you're feeding the wildlife when you do that.
You are.
Yes. What is the correct answer? Do we know?
No, we do not know,
I
Margie.
don't
That's
know.
why I asked you.
What is your position on
I'm
apple
not
cores
sharing
and
my
bananas?
position right now. I feel it's not appropriate at this time, so I'm going to keep it to myself.
Okay.
Let's go to Steve in Watertown. Who's the a-hole, Steve? Welcome.
They don't know. The wildlife.
Hi,
like
the guy.
Hi, Steve.
The guy is the a-hole.
Yeah.
Hi, he does. The guy is the a-hole because I go down to the Charles River where there's a really pretty trail to walk my dog off leash,
Yeah.
And they have some picnic tables there, and people, go to the picnic tables. They have their lunch, and they leave their litter all over the ground.
That is horrible.
Oh,
That's horrible.
I think also after dark, I think some people go there and drink beers and throw cigarette butts all over the place. So I was there yesterday, and I called the Watertown police to complain about the litter.
Yeah.
They told me that it's the state police jurisdiction, and I need to call the state police about it.
So, did you do it?
Not yet.
Okay, well,
I sometimes carry one of those long grabber tools in a bag, and I
You
do
do
pick
not.
up litter sometimes.
Is that true?
Yes, I do.
I love
yes,
that.
I do, and I just dump it in the nearest public barrel that I find, because there's no barrels along this trail.
Well, you're going to heaven. I don't mean immediately, but when your time comes, that is a wonderful, wonderful act. Thank you, Steve, for sharing that with us.
3 texters in a row say there is a C-click fix option in Cambridge.
There is?
Yes. There you go.
You
Jim.
take a picture of garbage
4
and someone
people.
picks it up?
Apparently so.
How did I not
We're
know
getting
that?
deluged with texters who
You know
say,
what?
Jim should get with the program.
You know what I just realized from Steve Watertown? We're actually talking about the wrong people. The issue is not so much, it's too late now, the a-hole, the woman or man in the relationship. The a-hole are people not just who throw trash out the windows, like Tommy. What was Tommy's last name?
I'm not going to tell you.
Is he dead?
No, he's
okay,
not.
what's his last name?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
He's a great guy, though.
I'm gonna look him up.
I've seen him at my reunions all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's
still
Jamie
there.
said, is it Tommy Heineman? That's not funny. We're not doing that today. Okay, so, what I started to say was the real a-hole is anybody who leaves trash.
Well, that's really awful.
I mean, horrible. Forget throwing out
really
the car
awful.
like this guy was just saying.
You know what's really
Leaves
tough,
it all
though?
like on the picnic
Sometimes you're
table.
at certain places where they do have trash bins,
Yeah.
but the trash bins are overflowing.
Oh, a lot.
So you're up there, you're trying to stick your trash in, and
Shove it in there.
well, then you're going to shove it in with your bare
No, you
hands.
do not. You use, this is an area where I
Okay.
have expertise. You use the trash that you are disposing of.
To push it down.
To push it down, yes. That I'm very skilled at that. In fact, I did that this morning with the recycling. That's right, yes.
Very good.
That was not pushed down quite far enough.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell you put your foot in there.
No, I could not. I would have fallen over. Had I put my foot in there, and then you'd get a picture and you'd be laughing like you're doing now. So that's the solution to that problem. Let's go to Sandy. Oh, Sandy, I think, has an answer.
The dumpster.
Okay, that's
and
funny.
Get compacted
Okay, that's
by
really
a
funny.
garbage truck. That would be a bad way to go.
That's great. Okay, Sandy, apparently from Newburyport, has an answer to the apple core banana peel question.
Oh, good. Thank you,
Hello,
Sandy.
Sandy.
What should
Welcome
we
to the
do?
show. What's the deal?
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so excited. I have something to say.
Great.
So, I am an environmentalist. I try to do everything I possibly can. And, of course, anybody that throws out garbage is an a-hole for sure.
Right.
However, it's apple cores and banana. Apple cores are part of our ecosystem. So I think that feeds our little critters out there. However, bananas are not. So I think that's garbage.
Oh, because they're from the tropics, you mean? We don't grow them around here?
Correct.
Oh, I got
Really?
you. Yeah, that's a
Correct.
good point.
Oh, that's brilliant, actually. I hadn't thought of that.
Now, the only problem with what I just said was we don't know how much pesticides are in those apples. So maybe this is what I've been thinking of recently,
Please.
because I throw out apple cores thinking I'm feeding the insects.
Yeah.
However, if I'm feeding them pesticides, uh-oh.
Well, how do you determine that? Sandy? That's a problem, right?
Well, maybe just only buy organic.
Well, you have it all figured out.
Or you wipe them down
That's
really
incredible.
well. Now, Natasha from Cambridge
No,
is
I really
saying...
do think about all this.
I know you do. You're great. Sandy, thanks for
Natasha
calling.
in Cambridge is saying apple cores and banana... Okay. Oh, she says the same thing. Okay. Apple cores, okay. Banana peels take forever to decompose. So there you go. Apples... No bananas.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Sandy, thank you for that. Where are you on the, do you know what we're talking about?
Yep.
Okay, what do you not work in the hour before your show? How do you know all the time what we're talking about?
Because we're so fascinating, he tunes in.
How do you know?
Because I can multitask.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so who's the a-hole?
multitask.
The picker-upper, including with poop, or the boyfriend who doesn't want her to do it?
The boyfriend.
Why is that?
Because she's doing a great thing.
Do you pick up stuff when you're walking
I
along?
do.
You
Sometimes.
Do not. That is
If I
You're
know,
a big runner. You're a big.
I don't do it while I'm running, but but when I stop running, because I always do a little cool down walk, but if I know that I can wash my hands right away, then I will pick stuff up. You know who else does? You probably talked about this, Michael Dukakis.
That's right.
Yeah, that's all we talked about.
Yeah. Great American.
Dukakis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
I think, can
it's
you do me a
bad that
favor?
we have to pick up after other people.
I'd like to see a photograph of you picking up trash next time you do it. Can you have somebody take a picture?
I'm going to give you my
very
story
much.
about following Michael Dukakis to
I didn't
Northeast.
multitask, I guess, earlier in the
missed that
segment,
part.
so I didn't hear you talking
What
about
are you
that.
doing on your show there thing?
David Duchovny's on the show.
Oh, la-di-da.
Very
Hot little
excited
number.
about that.
Yeah.
What's the you?
Yeah. What's he going to talk
Okay.
about?
He's going to be. He has a new book of poetry.
No.
Do you know he went to Princeton? He went to Yale. He studied English literature.
No.
So now he has a book of poetry that he's been compiling. Well, he's been writing for years. So it's compiled in this first volume.
That's pretty impressive.
So excited to speak with
else?
him. And then Robin Dawson of the Boston Film Festival is
Also
here.
a good one.
I know, she's been leading this festival for so long. She has her finger on the pulse of everything we should be seeing. So we'll talk about all the world premieres, the appearances, the Q&As, and she always puts together a fabulous roster. And then Kirsten Greenwich, the Obie Award-winning playwright, is here to talk about Kitty Knox. And Plays in Place has 3 one-act dramas about Kitty Knox, who is this turn-of-the-century cyclist who broke barriers.
Oh, really?
It's a hell of a show there, Jared.
It's a fun show today.
You prepared, would you say, or not?
I'm pretty prepared.
Okay,
Which is the
good.
play we're seeing?
California Hills
of California.
We're going tonight to
I haven't. No, because I didn't get to see it in New York, and I haven't seen it here yet.
We've never been to a dress rehearsal. We're going to the final dress rehearsal tonight.
You're special to be let into the final
we're very
dress
excited,
rehearsal.
I know.
actually.
I'm kind of excited.
We supposed to say
about
that? I think I said it.
Oh.
Goodbye. Have a good show.
Bye.
3
Jared,
minutes,
thank you very
Jared
much.
Bowen, down the whole thing.
Pick up your trash.
Pick up your trash.
Yeah, pick up the trash. That's a good idea.
I'm not
Remember,
picking up
Bill Evans used to pick up the placeholders when
He
he went
picked up
running?
the cones when he was
moved
running
them.
at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
If you're holding a space saver, they're called.
Space saver,
He
space
picked them
saver,
up.
that's right.
Former police commissioner.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be live at the BPL with our media analysis segment, Press Play. GBH's Alan Riley is going to join us, as well as the Globe's Lila Alphonse. Live Music Friday with the White Snake Projects, highlighting Native American performers. GBH's Callie Crossley. Joanne Chang and Christopher Meyers join alongside Efrain Gutierrez, a former Pine Street Inn resident currently employed at Flower Bakery, which is pretty cool. Our crew: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Patrick Lally ran our YouTube stream today. Thanks, Patrick. Our engineer is John the Clock Parker. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. Jared and the Culture Show comes up right after us with David Duchovny, the actor, starting immediately after us on 89.7 GBH.
I want to pay you a compliment before
What?
you go.
What?
I just looked it up. It's the first show in 3 weeks where you have not mentioned you know who. I mean, that is really quite impressive.
Well, let me tell you, a lot
Everybody
of
else
texters
did. Okay, I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And American Repertory Theater with Passengers, a blend of cirque, music, dance, and superhuman skill. The New York Times writes, extraordinary acrobatics provide gasps of delight. amrep.org. In 1974 Boston, revisit how busing and federally mandated school desegregation was met with shocking and racist violence. Watch American Experience, The Busing Battleground, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at